Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hi, this is Craig. Just want to let you know you can now advertise here on Everyone Loves Guitar podcast. For more information, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar, and today we are with the one and only Rob Garland. He's flown over from the UK just to be with us. No, that's not, just kidding. He's from the UK. He graduated from Christ Church College over in England with a bachelor's degree in music and radio, film, and television. He moved to the US in 1999, and he studied with jazz great Jimmy Bruno once he got here. Growing up in England, he worked in a diverse array of bands. He performed on the London college circuit and later played hundreds of gigs at festivals and clubs in the U.S. with his group, Rob Garland and the Blue Monks, opening for artists like B.B. King, Chuck Berry, and Booker T. The band gained airplay on international radio and TV stations, and they released several CDs of original music. In 2018, he joined the faculty at Musicians Institute in Hollywood, California, as a guitar instructor. He's been featured in numerous guitar magazines, and he put out his first instructional book published by Cherry Lane back in 2007, which then led him to working for TrueFire, where he's released full-length instructional courses excuse me, on topics such as the caged chords system, the pentatonic major scale, songwriting, and the pentatonic and major scale, right? It's not pentatonic major, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Well, there is a major pentatonic, but that's too different.
But that wouldn't be a whole course on just the pentatonic.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Good. I feel good. I actually know that. Yeah. Okay.
If you don't, there's a course I could get you.
Songwriting and chord tones. Rob also teaches private lessons through his TrueFire platform. He runs an artist channel on TrueFire called Babylon. He writes articles for Riff Journal, and he hosts live YouTube sessions, and he creates instructional courses for TrueFire, and he's one of their more popular teachers. He also teaches through Skype, private lessons, and at his studio in LA. He currently plays with his fusion power trio, which is called Rob Garland's Electric Trio, and his jazz.
Eclectic.
Rob Garland's Eclectic and Electric, I guess, trio.
Yeah,
and his jazz band Catatonic. They just played recently at the Baked Potato. He's performed sessions at LA studios such as Revolver and the Village Recorder, and he's co-written music for Bad Robot. He continues to write, record, and release his original music ranging in genre from jazz rock instrumentals to acoustic vocal folk. And he's currently available on most digital platforms. And I got to tell you, he's got a really good voice. I listened to some of his music. I mean, the guitar playing is awesome, but his voice is really good. He's worked with people like Jimmy Haslip from the Yellow Jackets, Andy Sinisi, who plays with Scott Henderson, Tony Newton, who's played with Gary Moore, Mick Stevens from Brand X, and Gus Thornton, who's played with Albert King. And Rob's endorsed by Bogner, Exotic, Daddario, Hellpix, Moody Straps, and he was influenced by everyone from Joni Mitchell to Frank Zappa. Dude, thank you very much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for asking me. I'm a fan of the show, so this is great.
Thanks, man. I always feel like an idiot when I read people's bios because I always make mistakes. It's horrible, man.
I didn't even know some of those things about myself, so it was nice to learn.
There you go. Okay, I didn't ask this question in the questions I gave you, but what do you teach at Musicians Institute?
So when I first started, I only started this year there, and I started off just subbing for all the other teachers, basically. So one day I could be doing an advanced jazz course, the next day I could be doing a funk course, just right across the board. But now I have my full day of private lessons. So I have a good 9 hours of private students that I see every week. And then I also go in and sub for other teachers as well still. So I have my day, and I work with my students on, things that I bring in, and also helping them get through the main curriculum. And then, of course, subbing for everybody else as well, as right across the board. So quite a lot of different lessons there.
And you have 9 straight hours of lessons?
They do give me a lunch break.
Holy shit, that's pretty intense, man.
It is intense, yeah. But usually at the end of Thursdays, I'm ready to sit down for a bit.
Holy shit. Well, I'm just thinking to do 9 hours of interviews. I'd be shot, man. Wow, that's a lot. So you came here to the States in 99 from the UK. What made you come here? And before you left, what were you doing music-wise over in England?
So I met a girl Imagine that.
I met a girl.
I met a girl who happened to be living in St. Louis, of all places.
You met her over there when you were back?
No, I actually met her here. Well, not here. I'm in LA now, but I actually met her in St. Louis. I had a friend of mine that was out there for the summer, and I wanted to see a little bit of that part of America. So I came out, met up with him. And ironically, I ended up playing at a really, really renowned jam session that they've had there for about 40 years. This blues jam session they have on Monday nights, and a lot of touring players come through and perform at it. So I went down to that, and I was playing at it, and she walked in with her then boyfriend. And and one thing led to another, and so I stayed there for a little while, and then we did the long distance thing, and then sort of had to make a decision. Was she going to move to England, or was I going to come to St. Louis? And she was in college in St. Louis, so it just made more sense really for me to come there. So I left everything at that time. I had a band that I've been working with for a long time in England called Dead Happy, and that was a great band, because when I joined it, I was by far the weakest link in that band. The guys were all older than me, and they were much more accomplished musicians, and I was completely out of my depth. So it was great, and but it was because of like a 5 or 6 year learning curve playing with them. So that it was kind of sad to leave them. Yeah. We had a good run, and that's the band I played a lot of the London circuit with, and all that kind of thing. And I put out my first solo EP, which I recorded maybe like a year before I moved to the US, and I sort of had that in mind as something to use as a calling card to try and get some work moved, and then I was playing with a couple of other bands as well. There was a rock band I was playing with, and I had an acoustic duo with a friend of mine from college that we used to work as well. So I had all of that going on. Plus I had lessons. I had quite a lot of private students at that point. So it was sort of like starting over. It's funny, I've actually done this twice now. I've started over completely twice.
I feel you.
From the move to America, and then the move from St. Louis to Los Angeles, later on. But anyway, so we moved to St. Louis, and when I first got there, then it was kind of like, wow, I'm a fish out of water here. I've got to figure this out, So that was quite a culture shock as well.
You gave up a lot, man, because you were you were really active there. You had a lot of things going.
I did, but there was also a change going on in England at that time where the gigs were starting to, it's like this happened in England before it happened here. The gigs were starting to pay a lot less, and they were becoming harder to come by. A lot of the smaller clubs and the pub scene and all that was going more to duos and DJs and that kind of, it's like it was sort of preempting what was going to happen over here later on, so I actually, in that way, the Midwest was actually a good place because there are a lot of gigs. Okay. So it was just a case of infiltrating the scene, so when I first came here, I started going to that jam session, the one I mentioned where we met, and also other jam sessions. And then I started hanging out at all the different guitar stores, befriending. A lot of those stores at that time didn't have lessons, so I befriended all the guitar stores and had them refer lessons to me.
Great, good hustle, man.
Oh yeah,
yeah, that's great.
I got quite a lot of students in that, and then I through the jams and a mutual friend, I ended up joining my first band in the US, which was a soul R&B band of all things, with a big horn section. It was a cool band. That's
cool, man.
I don't think I played a guitar solo for a year, which is kind of interesting, but it was great. It was great for the right hand, for the rhythm, So I did that for a year, and they played a lot, and that was good. And that was just a good way to get introduced to some of the booking agents and the clubs and the scenes and all that. And then after a year of that, I decided to form my own trio. And that was the start of the Blue Monks.
Did you? So you were like a hustler, man. Have you always been like that?
Yeah, I think it pretty much actually. Yeah, it's really funny. There's a change that went on. Like I started guitar when I was probably like 14, just about to turn 15. My friend and I both got guitars at the same time, and I was just obsessed with it. And so I played a lot. I wasn't very studious at the beginning. I just wanted to play, and I would write songs immediately, even though I couldn't play anything, But then when I finally got in the bands and started doing that, I really, really became very, very serious about it. And when I went to college, it wasn't until I was almost at the end of college that it occurred to me I could do this for a living.
Okay.
You know? It was always like, you do this and then you got to figure out something else to do, you know?
Oh, okay. What was the trigger that sort of said, hey, I can actually make money, you know, do this as a career?
You know, it was a strange thing. I sort of remember the day as well. It was very strange. I was at college and I was maybe a year left. And I just remember thinking, there's nothing else I'm going to like as much as this. You know, I just know it. You know, there's nothing else. There's nothing else. Because I, from a very early age, all I thought about was music. Really, I was completely obsessed. I still am completely obsessed with it. You know, and it didn't really even matter what genre as well. It's like whatever it is. You know, just really, really into it. I remember earliest memories of my mum and dad had a huge collection of 45s. You know, the singles. Sure. And they all had the brown sleeve, and they smelt really nice. And I remember like one of the earliest songs that I became utterly obsessed with was "Tell Laura I Love Her."
Oh my God, like, that's so funny!
Such a tragic song.
Yeah. You know?
And I just remember sitting there, and I would literally sit there as a kid and just keep putting the needle back on that record and cry my eyes out.
Oh my God! Yeah. That's wild.
So they had a very eclectic range of music too. I remember being obsessed with this spaghetti western themed album. Just bizarre.
Oh, like what the hell is it got? Like Ennio Morricone?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, that's great stuff, man.
I loved it.
That's amazing stuff.
But anyway, but I think one of the reasons I became so guitar obsessed was when we first started playing. My friend and I were like hard rock metal kids, right? And that doesn't seem unusual here, but actually in the UK at that time, it was pretty unusual. That was not music you heard of. Like Van Halen was not played on the radio, you know.
Wait a minute. Van Halen was not played on the radio?
Not mainstream Radio 1. Or I mean, the only time you would hear it would be on, there was this cult radio rock show called the Friday Night Rock Show, and it was on 10 o'clock to midnight on Friday nights, funnily enough. And my friend and I would record it on cassette, and then the next day sift through it and make notes like a couple of nerds.
Yeah. That's cool.
You know,
that's good stuff.
Is this bad? You know. So, and then we go on these sort of trips to the record shop to try and find some of this stuff. But because that music was so guitar orientated, you know, Ozzy, Gary Moore's rock stuff, you know, I mean, it was all guitar. So that's, I think, what pushed me more to the guitar than anything at that point, you know. And then, so anyway, fast forward to the college thing, and I'm already playing in Dead Happy. And that band, by the way, even though I was a big metalhead, that band was not a metal band at all. It was like a Brit pop funk kind of band. Nothing like what I was listening to at home, but I still love playing it, you know.
That's great.
So at college, I was sitting there and I just went, you know, there's nothing else I like as much. There's nothing that's going to have this visceral a feeling. Like even to this day, I can sit with a guitar on, just feeling it, and it just does something. It's like a calming influence. You know?
Yeah, it is. I find that.
So that is what it was. And I said, right, I'm going to do this. And it was very matter of fact, you know, but that was literally like flicking a switch that I was just going to, you know, and I knew it was going to be a rough road, and I didn't know quite how rough it was going to be, but, you know, yeah, I just kind of made the decision, right, I'm going to do this now. And then once I'd made that decision, it wasn't, I'll do this until I find something else. It was, I'm just doing this. That's it. You know.
Were you that, and then it sounds like you really hustled wherever you were to get a bunch of stuff going. Had you been that driven with anything else before that, or was it just?
No, definitely not school. Definitely not. The way the UK is set up is you do through 11 to 15, 16, you do a wide variety of topics. And then in the last 2 years of school, 16 to 18, it's the same school in some places. And then you just narrow it down. And it was only when I narrowed it down, you know, and I could do music, and I could do, I've always been a big English lit fan, writing, you know, I've done a lot of creative writing and that kind of thing. So once I could focus on things I was interested in, I was 100% into it. But other things, no, not so much.
That's really cool, though.
Well, it wasn't cool. It's cool except for if you need grades and some of those other things, and I wasn't really interested. You know?
Yeah, but, you know, in the while you're in it, you don't realize how insignificant all that crap is as it relates to the rest of your life. But while you're there, it's like, oh my God, so important.
It's funny though. I remember we had a parent teacher evening when I was about probably 12 or 13 or something. And I was really not enjoying chemistry classes. And in part, it was because I found the teacher to be extremely irritating. And even at that age, I guess I was an arse. Because
I found the teacher
at that age, I remember
irritating.
coming in and the woman saying, like my dad was there, and the woman said something like, he's going to need this. And I said, I'm not going to need it. And my dad, it was brilliant. My dad completely sided with me. And he went, well, he's probably not going to need it.
Unless you're going to be a chemist, maybe, or like a researcher.
I thought it was so great. That
that was very
really
cool. Yeah. That was very cool.
Yeah.
When you first came to the States, I wouldn't imagine the population of Brits in St. Louis is huge.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Yeah.
So I would bet you got a lot of opportunities being the English dude from out of the country, just because it was like it's like you're the new puppy.
It was a double-edged sword. In some ways, yes, and in other ways, I had never seen baseball, for example, right?
Right. Of course, they don't have that there.
Not cultural to us, is it?
Right.
And so St. Louis, and I had this belief that all of America must be like this, but of course it's not. Now, once I started to actually see it and get out there, but these people were so obsessed with their baseball team, and hey, if that's your thing, that's great.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't my thing, and so I would go into the bank, for example, right, to try and deposit a check, and everyone would be wearing St. Louis Cardinals uniforms, and I go up to deposit the check, and they'd say, "Can you believe what happened in the fourth?" Is it an innings?
The fourth inning, yeah. I could just see you calling your parents. They're all fucking possessed with baseball. I don't know what to do.
It was a little bit like that. It was like the Stepford Wives, those red shirts,
like
right?
Crocodile Dundee.
Yeah, exactly. That's
really
great.
funny.
So I'd say, I'm sorry, I didn't see the game. And honestly, the look they would give you would be like, you are not of this earth. There was some ostracizing going on because of that. But on the other hand, yes, there was I love your accent. Can you say something? So it was a mix. It was a mix.
That's funny, man.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're not in the baseball world, it's
Yeah, well, St. Louis is a big, heavy baseball town.
Yeah. But luckily, see what happened with that when I started with the trio, we started getting out of St. Louis and playing festivals and touring a bit more, and so that was good because then we got to see a bit more.
Oh, that's great.
The country and stuff like that. And there are parallels between St. Louis and the town I'm from. Only has I think it's like 40,000 people population.
Wow, that's tiny.
Tiny.
Where is that? What town are you from?
Margate.
And where is that?
Just southeast, right down on the water near Dover.
Okay, I know what Dover is.
And it's right on the southeast coast, and it's so it's tiny. And it's funny. I see parallels between some of the people there and some of the people in St. Louis, in the sense that sometimes they never leave.
Oh yeah.
And there's and because of that, there's an insular way of thinking, and that used to drive me nuts both in Margate and in St. Louis. So. Yeah.
That's not an uncommon thing in general throughout the country. There's a lot of people that just aren't adventurous, or they just, and I think it's because everything you could want, quote unquote, in theory, is here, wherever you are. There's nothing really like basic material needs, so you've got to be curious to go somewhere else. Whereas, in England, you go, 500-600 miles, you're in another country. They don't speak the same language. And that's a lot more like, wow, that's, I think it makes you more curious and it's easier. It's easier to do something.
I think geographically, that's a big part of it.
For sure.
Probably for 5 or 6 years, we would go to Spain for our family holiday, which is fantastic. Such a great country. But exactly. And the time it would take us to get to Spain, you'd be on the same highway.
Yeah, you can't even get across Texas in that time.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
So I do think that's a big part of it. But I think that causes a lot of problems, though, because it's this. We're seeing a lot of insular thinking at the moment in the US, and in other countries as well. And I think part of that is just, if you don't get out there and see what's out there, how are you going to have a real perspective on it?
Yeah. That's one of the things I'm very grateful for growing up in New York, that I got exposed to so much. It's probably more than I should have, but much at a young age, as far as like, accents and people not looking the same. And that's the way it is there. You don't even think anything of it. So it's like, and that served me well, my whole life. I mean, I never felt out of place wherever I am. And I always feel like if someone's got an accent, I could pretty much almost 100% of the time understand them. And I don't mind saying, hey, can you please repeat that? So it's funny. My wife told me when she came here, the thing that fascinated her was donuts.
Oh yeah.
Cause they didn't have, we're older than you, but she said they never had donuts where she grew up. Again, she's from a little tiny town. So she saw donuts. And she's a little tiny thing. She don't eat much, but she was like, wow, these are really cool. It's funny how these little, I remember when I went to the UK to my mother-in-law's house one time, she needed something. And I said, hey, I'll run to the store and get it for you. Maybe like an extension cord, something. And I'll never forget this because it's the only time in my life it happened. I walk in the store and I asked this young girl, whatever, and she's standing there looking at me. And I said, hey, are you okay? And she goes, I love your accent. And I was hysterical laughing, it was like just hilarious, because probably back then I had a New York accent even, I don't know, but it was just really funny. So it's just interesting, like where the countries are on the surface, they're very similar, but there's really not a lot, but there's some differences that are really different. I
think there's quite a lot of differences, actually. I mean, I've been in the US 18 years now, and honestly, every few days I feel like there's a word or something that comes up that we have a different term for. It's kind of amazing, I mean, in some ways very similar, but in some ways not at all. I was at this backyard thing a couple of weeks ago, and for the first time in my life, I tried a Funyun.
Oh, is that like a fried onion or something?
Yeah, it's like a fried onion. Well, I would say crisp, but chip, right?
Yeah,
so, yeah. Amazing. Can't believe I've lived my whole life with that experience. See, there's amazing things around every corner like that. So.
That's so funny, man. It's funny. I'll tell you a quick story about a crisp. I interviewed a guy. His interview's coming out Friday, actually. His name, do you know Anto Drennan?
I don't know.
He's a really good player. He lives in Ireland. He's played with Mike and Mechanics, Genesis.
Oh, nice.
Real top session player.
Yeah.
He was on a bill with Gary Moore one day. And I mean, honestly, this is the funniest story I've ever heard. So he's up in the dressing room. He thought it was his dressing room. Turns out it was Gary Moore's dressing room. And he said he had met Gary in the past. He said, and he's the kind of guy who was very anxious. He was hard to talk to before a show at times. You like stay away. So he's looking around and he sees the catering shit and he sees a bag of crisps and he opens it up. And everybody listening, crisps is potato chips basically, but they call them crisps in the UK. And so he opens this bag of crisps and all of a sudden he hears the toilet flush. He's like, oh, that's weird, because he thought it was his dressing room.
Right.
And Gary Moore walks out and Gary looks at him and he goes, who the fuck are you? And he's sitting there and he's like, oh, hi, Gary. And he goes, are you eating my fucking crisps on top of that?
Wow.
So whenever I hear Chris now, I think of that story. Cause
that's amazing.
Are you eating my fucking crisps? And that thick brogue that he probably
Yeah. Crisp.
Oh, man.
That's great. That's great that the crisps brought us to Gary Moore, because that was, I would say, top 3 most important guitar players in my life.
Gary Moore?
Gary Moore was one of them, for sure.
Which Gary Moore?
When I first heard... I'm sorry?
Which Gary Moore? The metal era Gary
Moore?
No,
the rock Gary Moore, the sort of Celtic rock.
Yeah.
Black Rose, Thin Lizzy, Back on the Streets, his first solo album, through Corridors of Power, through his sort of like mid-80s Run for Cover, Wild Frontier. I mean, I was just completely
Those are some good records, man.
My God. To me, the best Strat, probably the reason to this day why I choose Strat style guitars, the best Strat tone I ever heard when I was a kid, and right through to now, is on Corridors of Power, which I think was about 1982. So, and you think how early that is when you think about amazing guitar tone. Just that record was huge for me. So yeah.
Did you ever get to see him?
I did,
Oh.
and I was supposed to see him on the After the War tour, which I was super excited about. And then Cozy Powell died in a motorcycle crash, and so the tour was cancelled. And then he came back the next year, and the next year was the crossover when he started doing Still Got the Blues.
Yeah.
So I saw him on his first blues tour, which was phenomenal. And actually he had Albert Collins and Albert King at that show, which is pretty cool.
Right.
But yeah, it was great. I would have liked to have seen him on the tour before, but that wasn't to be. But it was amazing. And the thing that was great about that, there was this great little club called the Leescliffe Hall in Folkestone, another little tiny seaside town in the southeast of England. And his Les Paul was just sitting on the stage. He just walked on the stage, picked it up, no intro music, nothing, and then played for 2 hours, like with the intensity that
2 hours.
He was at an arena or something. That's the thing. That's the lesson I've taken from him more than anything. And people sometimes, I see people, if I occasionally make the mistake of reading online comments about anything, I sometimes see people say, "Oh, Gary Moore's he's just a fast player." He's just, and they completely miss the intensity that was in every single note. I mean, the guy was just, and it's funny you say about the anxious thing, because a few years ago I got to play with Tony Newton, that was in Gary Moore's band for the G-Force record, and he said the exact same thing. He said he was very, very anxious. He said he was actually really nice. Yeah. His band and everybody, but yeah, there was a lot of anxiety, and that was just coming out in the music.
Yeah. So. I talked with Martin Barr from Jethro Tull, and he said Gary was really a lovely guy. He said he was one of the best guys around. So, wow, that's so cool to get to see him in a small club. And yeah, his intent, that's what I was very turned on to him about, his intensity. I mean, what I liked about him, he was fast, but he wasn't fast to be fast. He was just as soulful and slow and sweet as he was fast,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. There's a I had it on VHS. It shows you how old I am.
Not as old as me.
There's a concert called Live in Stockholm. I think it's 1987, and it's on YouTube. The whole concert's on YouTube, and that is the peak for me of his playing. Like, if you want to see Gary Moore in his kind of rock and roll peak, that's it. Yeah. So I recommend that to anyone that's curious. Go on YouTube and watch Gary Moore live in Stockholm.
Awesome. Thank you, man. That's great. I'm going to come back to your influences in a little bit.
Sure.
Your other influences. Okay, so you were here for a while. You basically wash, rinse, and repeat. You did the same thing you did in England. You hustled, and you started building a career. Then you moved to LA. What was that all about?
So my wife and I came to LA.
That was the girl you met was your wife.
Yes, girl. Yeah, we were together 15 years. Sadly,
dude, that's a long time.
Yeah, she was super young when I met her. I mean, like I say, she was just starting college, and yeah, we were 15. But both of our sort of adult lives. But we divorced a couple of years ago. But yeah, we were together a long, long time, and yeah, so we came out to LA a couple of times, and I loved it from the second I got here. And I should just give you a little background on that. When I was at college, so this would be the mid-90s, a lot of everybody there was listening to whatever. The downside of England is because it's so small. I mean, it's the size of Illinois, right?
Yeah, it's comparatively, so small,
yeah. Whatever is sort of the flavor of the month becomes the thing now, whether that used to be, Coldplay, and then it was Radiohead, and and these are, I actually really like Radiohead.
Oh, I love Radiohead.
Coldplay, I could take a leave, but Radiohead, I really like.
Agreed.
So, but anyway, but anyway, it's sort of the flavor of the month, and I became absolutely fascinated by this West Coast, jazz, I guess you'd call it, scene. And it all started for me because of Toto, of all things, right? Because I was watching this late night TV show when I was about 17, and Toto were on it, and it blew my mind,
Oh, Lukather's?
Yeah, Lukather just blew my mind. It was like, wow, he has that rock aggression and tone that and rock playing that I've grown up loving through all these metal guys and rock guys. And by that point, well, we'll talk about influence later. But anyway, the point being, I was really obsessed with that sound, and it led me to this whole world of West Coast jazz musicians that all culminated in the baked potato. Right. And so while I was at college, I was getting records sent from Japan that were recordings
of the baked potato. That's so cool, man.
That's what I was listening to at college. And then, of course, when we came out here, I think we came out here the first time, maybe 2004, I think it was. And, it's funny because we came out here and I remember we went to a taping of the Jimmy Kimmel show, like a tourist.
Sure.
and I
was a very touristy thing to do.
It's so touristy. I went down there and spoke to the band on the break, and I said, "Man, you guys sound great." And this is really sad. The band said, I actually became friends with Jeff, the keyboard player from that band, who I know now. But at the time, he said to me, "I think in 10 years of doing this, you're the first person that's ever come down here and complimented the band."
You're kidding.
And he goes, "We're all playing at the baked potato later." So there was like these weird connections.
Oh, that's great. So that's like the universe very much supporting your deal,
but
man.
It was so sad to me that nobody had come. I mean, these guys are just monster players.
That's weird.
But anyway,
you know what I think? I'll tell you why. People are afraid to approach this. The thing in this country, I think, is anybody that's doing something is like pedestaled, and I think people in general are like, oh, I can't talk, that guy's or that gal's a superstar. It's a really weird dynamic in this country. And quite frankly, I think one of the reasons that like this show has worked for me is I'm not like a guy who's starstruck.
Yeah. Right.
So, I've always been like that my whole life. I never know why. Everybody's the same to me, It's
sure, yeah.
Your kids don't listen to you. You got too much shit to do, I mean, it's like it's not like, okay, well, you are some celebrity, therefore you don't have the problems the rest of us have, or problems, but the shit to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
You argue with your wife. I mean, it's like so. But I don't think people look at it like that. So I'm not surprised in a way because people are probably afraid to go unless they're a musician, which I'm surprised another musician wasn't there because a musician would know, oh, I can go talk to these guys just like you did.
Right.
That's really weird.
It is weird. But anyway, so we had such a great time out here and I, and then we sort of put this sort of plan in our heads, like, and our life there, she was having a lot of problems with her parents and stuff. And it just seemed like a good time to move, and we talked about starting a family and everything as well. So it just seemed like if we were going to do it, we needed to do it. And so she actually applied for a job through a company and got accepted here. And then we came out again, and I started. I actually went and played with a bunch of bands while we were out here
on vacation. That's great.
Yeah, on a scouting trip.
Yeah.
And I started putting ads on all the local Craigslist and checking out the music stores for lessons. So all the stuff I'd done in St. Louis, I preempted this time.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: when I left St. Louis at that point, I was getting more and more into the fusion jazz. I mean, fusion's a funny word. People have such a negative reaction to it. All I take it to mean is it's more than one style. That's it, right? So
really, who has a negative reaction to it?
Oh yeah, jazz musicians.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's very it's sort of a dirty word for a lot of people.
That's weird because that's most of the. That's a more popular. The guys that are playing fusion, I think, are probably a little more popular than the guy. I mean, there's a bigger audience for that than the
there is
hardcore jazzers.
Rock crossover.
Yeah,
right? Yeah, but a lot of them don't want to use the F word.
Okay,
so, whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, so in St. Louis, I had actually got myself a fusion band, and I was doing a jam band, more like a kind of a Fish type of band. It wasn't really like Fish, but it was kind of an open-ended jam band, which was really fun, and an acoustic duo. And I had at that point, I'd finally built up about 35 private students, and all that had to go.
Wow.
So, yeah, Holy it was time crap. To start over again. So anyway, so I came here, but I had a few more things happening when I came to LA than when I came to St. Louis because I'd already started working with TrueFire and the book and everything. So
right, okay, great.
But anyway, so we did that, and then my wife interviewed for the job, got the job. I put some contacts in place, and then we moved out here in 2010. Yeah.
That's very cool, man. I'm sorry I had to go through a divorce. I've been through one. It's not easy. It's a weird thing, divorce. You're like so relieved, but it's a very, at least for me, I was relieved, but it was really unnatural.
Yeah.
Like getting together and getting married there's no frame of reference for that, but it seems like an organically natural thing. Unwinding it, again, just for me, it was very unnatural. It took a while to sort of, adjust.
I think in some ways it would have been easier if we didn't have our daughter.
Oh, but God, course,
yeah. But because we have our daughter and we do 50-50 parenting, that's been emotionally complex. I would say, because everything's tied in with you want the best for her no matter what. And actually, a couple of years in now, my ex-wife and we have great communication, and it's all about our really daughter. Good. So, but it's to me it hit me a little bit like almost like a grief. It came on in waves, and it was quite unexpected. Some of the time. So, it's a funny thing. The mind does some funny stuff, and then it sort of surfaces when it feels like it, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's with everything. For me, it wasn't grief. I was fucking thrilled, to be honest with you. Honestly, it was like, I felt like, man, now I'm going to start the life I was always meant to live. But it was tough with the kids. I had 2, and it was tough with all that stuff. So yeah, and it's just weird that the whole process is like getting an apartment on your own is kind of, I remember that was weird, and that whole stuff. But
I have I have this house here, but I have a guest house in the back that I had converted into my studio. And then it's like, well, you're a musician living in LA. You have this little house. The guest house has to become a guest house again. Otherwise, I'm not going to find a way to do this. So,
well, thank goodness you had that, man.
I have a tenant as well. Yeah.
That's great. Good for you, man. I'm glad that worked out at least.
Yeah. So we moved to LA, and I love. I really. It's funny. I hear people bitching and moaning about LA all the time, and I love it. I think it's great. The one thing I don't like is the traffic.
Traffic. I knew you were going to say that.
Other than that, I love LA. And I know it's full of crazy people, and it's full of people that are, everybody you meet has a screenplay, and it's kind of true.
Yeah,
but I like it. It's fun.
Very cool, man. Are you working on anything now that you're excited about?
Yes. Yeah. I have. Well, I just talked to the True Fire folks a couple of days ago, and I'm going back to the studio next year. Are you in Tampa?
Make sure you hit me up. Yeah.
So it's in St. Petersburg, which is super close.
I can drive right over there. I love St. Pete. It's a great place to hang out.
I usually fly into Tampa, so it's
awesome. Very cool.
So I'm going there next year, shooting 2 courses with them, and they've had this huge upgrade. They moved into a new studio. It's like a state-of-the-art facility. They've got all these robotic cameras, all this crazy stuff down there.
That's
so
great.
I'm going down there to shoot 2 courses with them. The follow-up to one of my courses that's been really, really popular was one called Chord Navigator Caged Triads. And it's all about the cage system, which is really, really opens up the guitar for people. It's like it's a big part of my teaching philosophy. It's like if you really get that down, it can really, really help you. And not just in chords and rhythm, it gives you chord tones for soloing and finding all those cool double stop Steve Cropper rhythm parts, all that cool Hendrix stuff. It's all in cage. So I'm a big, big fan of that system. And the first course I did on that was very, very popular. People have been asking me a lot for a follow-up. And,
awesome.
The thing with True Fire is they have hundreds and hundreds of amazing guitar players, so you have to wait to get in the line. So I'm very excited to be going back next year to do the part 2 of that, and a different course as well.
Can you say what the other one is?
I don't know what the other one is. I've got to figure that out, but it's not till April. So.
Well, you know what, man? Would it be good if you got suggestions? What people are interested in, like maybe, hey, man. So, and everybody listening, if you've purchased some of Rob's courses and you have an idea for what you'd like to like him to teach next, you want me to just tell him to post it on your social media, or
they can email me at rob@robgarland.net. That'd be great.
Email Rob at robgarland.net, robgarland.net, and that would be great, because sometimes, like, I know I've been running a marketing business for 20 years, and I always like go out to your list, whatever project I'm working on, and like sometimes they have the answers for you. So,
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
That's cool, definitely. Man. Well, I look forward to seeing you down here. That'll be awesome. Very cool.
Yes, we're doing that. And I've been doing these, I've started a series of courses that I write, shoot, edit, produce myself here. I've done 2 of those. and they're a series. They're called the Melodic Soloing series. The first one was about the major scale. The second one's about blues chord tones, which is a pretty useful one, I think. And so I'm going to work on a third one of that. Again, not sure what yet, but that's on my list of instructional courses to do.
And those you self-publish those?
Yeah, well, it's through TrueFire.
Okay.
TrueFire.
Awesome.
But I do all the I do all the shooting and editing and everything. And then while we're talking about TrueFire, I also have this. They've started doing these artist channels. So I have one of those as well, which has tons of content on it. And that's basically that's not live. It's people go on the channel and they'll see, I add new guitar lessons every month or two. There are all these categories like riffs that rock. I went through and I found some of my favorite riffs, and I have these mini lessons teaching you how to play those songs. Songs with amazing guitar tone, like where I start talking about, like, why is it that Alan Holdsworth's solo on Devil Take the Hindmost was so amazing, and then here's the gear he used and all this kind of thing. Jam tracks where I encourage students to download the track and then jam. There's concert stuff for some of my bands on there. There's a ton of content.
And that's where do they get
Musician Jokes is a popular one.
Musician, and that's on the Babylon?
That's on Channel Babylon. Yeah.
And you can get that from your site, from robgarland.net?
Yes.
Awesome. Very cool. And you're
I'm
really
liking all that. Sorry, go ahead.
You're really good about, like, I belong to some of the same groups, like Stratocaster. I know I'm in some groups here on Facebook. You're really good about posting content there too.
Some would say shameless.
No, but let me tell you something, man. I've been in sales 30 years. Nothing gets bought until it gets sold first. And if you're going to sit and wait and hope somebody finds your shit, hope is not a very good business strategy. So
Absolutely.
You going out there and delivering something of value to turn people onto you, I don't think that's shameless. I think that's smart. I just think it's how you have to play. You have to do it these days. It's how the game is played. I tried to resist the Facebook thing for a little while, but then it just, it's like, why not try and reach as many people as you can? I got a little bit annoyed because I'm not going to mention his name, but a famous musician's son posted a bit of a rant saying, why do all these musicians post links to their gigs and post links to their this or that or their instruction materials? And I thought, well, not because you want people to, because you want people to come.
Said famous musicians. So I thought that was kind of rude.
That is rude, man. Like, what, is this guy playing out anywhere?
Yeah.
And how does he get people to his show?
Probably through his last name.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But,
man. I think all the stuff you do is cool. You're not like. No, I think you're doing it appropriately.
One thing that I do that's kind of fun is the Jam of the Month, which is through
right.
Jam Track Central. That thing's really fun. I tell you, some of the players in that group are so talented.
Yeah,
it's and they're just a lot of them are just hobbyists, and they're fantastic.
Mm.
So I enjoy listening to their stuff as much as I do doing my own for that. It's just a fun. I only allow myself 1 or 2 takes because it has to be fresh.
Yeah.
So it's like. And then just post it every month. And I love seeing how a lot of those guitar players, especially, guys from all over the world, come at the same jam from a different perspective. I think it's really interesting. It is
really cool.
Very
talented. And listen, a lot of people that are listening to this are looking for side hustles. And I think I really want to point this out, what you're doing, because you can't, you have to go after it.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like shit doesn't happen. You've got to jump and make stuff happen.
I'll tell you how I got from doing the book to doing TrueFire with that in mind.
Yeah.
So I sent my EP. I recorded this EP before I left England, like I say, and it was kind of like a little, we would say a CV back then, like a little calling card.
Absolutely.
Put a little press kit together. Sent that to all the guitar magazines in England, all the guitar magazines I knew of in America. All the radio stations, all that kind of stuff. And Guitarist magazine gave it a nice positive review. Now, the Guitarist magazine was still is. It's like, it's
a big magazine. And they're not cheap, those magazines. They're like £70 for a subscription nowadays.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sort of shocked they're still going, but pleased that they are.
I know,
because I'm an old school guy. I love books and magazines. I don't like the smell of a Kindle. But But anyway, so I sent that, and I got a good review in that. So I sent that, to the publisher of Cherry Lane, along with an outline for the manuscript for the book. And that, I think I didn't hear back from him from probably 18 months it took to actually get a call back, because you imagine how many of these they get, So anyway, we ended up doing the book together. So then I took the book and I sent that to Truefire, and I said, look, why don't I, because Truefire at that point, we're just getting more into the online thing. It was the switch was sort of happening,
sure.
And I said, why don't I do a 6-lesson series for free for you, just for you to use on as a promotion. So I did that. And then it turns out they were launching classrooms, which I've run a classroom for them for the past, it's got to be almost 10 years, about 8 years maybe. And now they're sort of starting to phase those out a little bit because they're sort of getting into these channels and some other things. But my classroom has been really good, so I did that with them. And so I got in on the ground floor with them, and now I have conference calls where we talk about the direction they're going in and that kind of thing. So I'm quite involved.
That's great.
Too far, which is good. But in terms of the hustling, I would go to every endorsement I got has come from the NAMM show, every single one. And it's come from me forcing myself into meetings with these companies, giving them a load of stuff, and then calling them back and back and back. Same with trying to play shows. It took me, my trio's been playing down at Alva's showroom in St. Pedro, which is a beautiful state-of-the-art room there. And a lot of bands come in through there to record their live albums there, because it's such a great room. And that took 18 months of me going there, press kit, go down there, sit in. It's if you want to do this stuff, you have to be pretty pig-headed about it.
Well, you have to promote. You have to go out. Listen, man, it doesn't mean everything you're going to do is going to work.
No.
But if you don't do anything,
2% of it works.
Right. But that 2% can have a pretty big impact on your career, because then it leads to, you did the book, that led to this. You did the Truefire clip. Let me do the free thing for you. Now you're one of the top teachers. Now you got a classroom. Now you got a private channel. So it's like every little thing, another door, sometimes not everything, but a lot of things you do open. I would say in the music industry, as just an outsider talking to you guys for almost a year, I would say everything you do does open another door.
Yeah, I agree.
In music.
I agree. It does. Yeah.
And so but if you do nothing, I promise nothing will ever happen, So guys sitting at home getting frustrated, don't get frustrated. Fucking do something about it, man. I mean, and all you need is one thing to happen, and then the next thing will happen. And the first thing may not happen, like you said, for 18 months, but who gives a shit?
Right. Absolutely. And one thing I'd say as well is it's definitely, and I know this is true in LA, but I think it's true everywhere. It's people and relationships as well. Like when you should go and sit down with people. Like if you want to work with a company, go to the factory, tour the company, meet the people, sit down, talk to them, get to know them. It's about relationships as well. It's not just about a quick phone call here and there. You have to cultivate these things, and that's a. If you're in this for the right reasons, that should be fun for you. I love meeting people.
Right.
I mean, like how fun is it to sit down with Reinhold Bogner and talk about his amps with the guy that's made these legendary? I mean, that to me, that's super fun. You know?
I agree with you 100%. And go to gigs and see people play, and then go talk to them afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
That's you want to network, just do that. Hey,
I just played the Baked Potato for the first time. I went down there and played the Jam Night a bunch.
That was the first time you played it?
That was the first time I played it with my
Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Thank you. That was a real thrill for me.
Sure.
It was almost too much of a thrill, because
that's great,
I was looking at my amp in that corner. I'm like, my amp is in the same spot where I saw Larry Carlton and Lukather and all these guys,
That's
so
cool,
I had to get that out of my head, they just enjoy the gig, but it was great. It was super fun. So I went down there a couple of times, did the Jam, and that's a hard place to get into again. It's like he's so inundated with people trying to play there, and he has a very small circle that he actually uses. So, it takes a while. You just have to be patient and just not give up with these things. You just have to keep pushing, Do
you know Jay?
Yeah.
I interviewed him. He was a good guy.
Oh yeah, he's at MI as well.
Yeah.
I know most of those guys because Jamie was in the Zappa thing.
Right.
I'm a huge Frank Zappa guy, so that was a cool project, and I got to play with the bass player of that for a while as well. So yeah, it's just it's kind of a small scene once you
very small, man, very small.
Yeah, no, it's great. So that was a real thrill playing there for sure. But yeah, it's just you just have to keep contacting people and keep pushing that stuff. There's the one thing I have noticed in LA that is odd to me is I was working at this when we first moved to LA. I worked at a music academy in Santa Monica for a few years, Green Broom's Music Academy, and so a lot of the teachers there were straight out of Berkeley. And I kept hearing this same thing from them. They were saying things like, "Well, I'm going to teach here for 6 months, and then I'll have my sideman gig. Then I'll have my touring gig. Then I'll have this." And I'm thinking, wow, that's interesting. I mean, I'm all for, like, what do you call it, the goal board, where you put I'm all for that, positive thinking and the laws of attraction. I believe in some of that, but these people weren't doing hardly anything to achieve it. And there was just this sort of like sense of entitlement, like it's going to come to me now because I've moved to LA. It doesn't work like that.
No. And I think people are rudely awakened in anything. Or it's like, the guy, I graduated college. Okay.
Yeah.
Now you got to go get a job,
Right, exactly.
Good luck, man.
Well, you seem like a super motivated guy as well. You don't seem like you still very much.
No, I don't. That's not my way. In fact, I struggle with, and it's a problem. I struggle with sitting. It's like sometimes my kids are grown now, but like, and I'm really good now when everybody comes over, like once a week, I don't work, and and it was really, it's pathetic to say, but it was hard for me to do that. Like I love my kids and I love being around them, but it was like, I measure my value sometimes by productivity, which is absurd. As I'm getting older, I've really worked on it and getting better, but yeah, I don't like sitting still. I like when I used to, I don't know, let's say 3-4 years ago when the kids were still home, if I'd show up downstairs or in the living room at 7:00, they'd all be like, "The fuck are you doing here?" It's like, "What's Dad? Everything all right?" And like, I didn't know what to do. It was horrible. Like, so I really try now to, enjoy my life more. It's a higher priority. My happiness is, driven from more than productivity now. It's, as I've gotten older, I've really, really tried to work hard on that. And sometimes I have to fake it, not fake it to them, but like fake it to myself. Like, I know I feel like I need to do this, but let me go hang out with my family. And literally there hasn't been one time where I've said, "Oh, I should have," that old adage, no one says they wish they spent more time at the office.
Right.
It's true. There hasn't been one time where the end of the night comes and I walk everybody outside and kiss them goodbye. And, I come back in and say, "Shit, I had a miserable time." It's like, "Oh, I'm so glad I didn't work." So I'm trying to be better with that. Yeah. But I'm pretty driven. Yeah.
I would say I have the exact same problem that you just described. And I would say, unfortunately, that probably caused some problems in the marriage as well for that very reason. And having a child when my daughter was, for the first couple of years, you're pretty much just kind of keeping them alive, like moving them from one spot to another.
Yeah.
Right? So it was always very, and we had an agreement that. I was gonna, because I was, it's very tricky when you work from home or do a lot of online stuff. Sometimes people think you're just home, but that's not necessarily the same as actually working from home, because I like to be extremely productive as well, and so it was very difficult for me going from that to I might have 3 or 4 projects on the go, and then I'm going to do 2 days of 24/7 dad duty, and those projects are not going to have room, for a couple of days. And so that, and still to this day, I struggle with that, switching it on and off, because I've always got 4 or 5 things happening. And so it's and I'm trying to be mentally present has been the biggest challenge, I think.
It's tough. The one thing I've always done that has helped, like I'm in the gym 5 days a week, no matter what.
Right.
Always. And I know, like, especially now that I'm older, I'm 50, not that I'm old, I'm 54, but like, I see my physical condition and I see my people, the average person, my age group physical condition. I'm like, man, thank goodness I've done this, because I don't have any limitations physically. I can do what I did at 20, probably better. So, and then I started playing guitar 3 years ago, and I don't practice every day, but that has been really therapeutic for me. As you know, I mean, it's like, honestly, I can start, even if I have to pick up the guitar at midnight and play for an hour, it's like,
sure.
Oh my God, this feels so, I just like, it's such a stress. It's, it's like almost like a magic pill.
Yeah.
You take it and it's like,
I used to exercise more, and recently I've kind of let that go. I have to make a point to get back, because mentally it's a big help. So,
it's huge, man.
I think it's kind of interesting. I just listened to your interview with Robin Ford, and he was talking about the same thing. I think it's interesting though with if you do music and the guitar for a living, well, just that in itself, you play music and then you do it for a living, and so I think that there's definitely two things that are rubbing up against each other there.
Your hobby and your vocation.
Right, exactly. And so it's like, and also that's another reason why in some ways I'm never off the clock, but then in other ways I don't want to be off the clock. I want to be playing the guitar all the way. But then it's like you have all the business side of things, promotion and, whether it's editing, video, whatever it is, it all pertains to the guitar and music and the career. But there's a disconnect there sometimes with getting back to what it was when I was 15, sitting on my bed strumming a power chord that made me go, oh my God, So it's important to try to keep that. There's definitely some juggling involved in that. I think the music business is an issue.
Oh, it's totally an issue. I've been also fortunate. I don't know how. I really lucked out with my wife. We get along. Yeah. I really like spending time with her. So that's always been like, ultimately I want to hang out with her. So it's, sure. So I've been very fortunate that pulls me away as well. But yeah, I do. Yes. That all being said, I still struggle with it,
Yeah. I had that relationship as well, for most of our time together. And it always makes me laugh when people, two things really, like people I often hear people like, in their 30s, 40s, either talking negatively about their wife, like, oh no, I've got to spend time with my wife, or talking negatively about their job. And, I'm of the mindset, then maybe you should change either of those.
Yeah.
Maybe you shouldn't be married to that person, and maybe you shouldn't have that job. I mean, this idea that, to me, you only get one life, I just don't understand it.
No, you're 100% right.
No, I know it's going to be uncomfortable to do either of those things, but if you're just going to moan about it for years, what's the point?
No, I agree with you.
I mean, I know it's a simplistic thing to say, but I kind of believe it.
Well, on the wife side, like I know, like, so once you'll see in the next 10 years, like we know couples where like they live, it's really kind of bizarre. Like they live completely separate lives. I mean, it's really fucking weird. Like they're never together and that's their thing. It's and it's bizarre. And I'm like, why would you, I'm like the same thing, man, that, you get 20 years for murder. You guys have been together for 40. I just like, what, so
vacationing separately. That one is really bizarre.
Right. Vacationing separate, man. Some of these people they haven't like had sex in like 10 years. And I'm like,
right.
I'm like,
yeah, that's crazy.
That really like, what? I can't even process that one. No, like, why would you be single?
Exactly.
Like, I'm like, yeah. So it's really weird. And I'm not judging it. I'm just like, what I'm saying is everybody I think has a different definition of what like love or relationships is. And sometimes it's based on like what your parents did. Other times I don't, it's maybe you develop your own stuff. Like mine is not based on what my parents did. It was just like what I wanted out of a relationship, period. Whether we're married or not, this is like the criteria. And it happened to line up with my wife's, and like we're both of the mindset that we're not here this isn't a fucking charitable event, we're here to like put into something and get something out of it,
Right, sure.
and we're pretty blunt with each in a good, not in a bad way, in a good way of honest, like, basically. Yeah, in an honest way, really honest. Yeah. And she's a Brit too. Go figure that out. I don't know how.
Right.
And, so, but yeah, it's everybody I think is just getting through the day, trying to figure shit out all the time. I know I am,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But, like the older you get, that saying at the end of the more you know nothing. I think that's so true.
Oh, yeah.
It's certainly true in music as well. Certainly true. Like you open one door and there's 5 more, which I think is a good thing. Some people do not. So it's
keeps you hungry. You know,
I think so. Yeah.
If you're at the point in anything where you're like, man, I've got this, and like, how is it fun?
Yeah, and how have you got it?
And how have you got it? Well, that's a delusional thing. But
yeah,
I mean,
it's a complete delusion. Yeah. You know.
So, dude, let me ask you the very American question now.
Yeah.
What was your childhood like growing up in Margate? It sounds like it was pretty cool.
It was very cool. Yeah. I had a good relationship with my parents. It was good. I mean, like, you know, there were the teenage years when my mum and I kind of rubbed each other a little bit the wrong way, but that's pretty standard. Yeah. No, it was really good. I didn't have any brothers or sisters, so which I actually liked. You know, some people say, "Oh, they always wanted a brother or sister," but I always, you know, had a lot of voices in my head, so that kept me going. And I have a friend, the same friend I mentioned earlier. His name's Kieran. When we were 14, we got the guitars together. He and I were inseparable from about 12 onwards. Actually, so much so that at his wedding, I was best man. Years later, his dad revealed that he thought we were gay because we spent so much time
hilarious.
Together. Yeah,
oh
I know.
My God.
His dad was like, I was relieved when he got a girlfriend, which of course shows he's from a small town. He's relieved.
Yeah. That's so
funny. So that was pretty funny. So we still. To this day, he lives in Brighton, and we still communicate every week.
Oh, that's really cool.
Actually, I'll tell you a funny thing we do. When we right before we got the guitars, for 5 years before that, we were both into computer games, and at that point, you know, we're talking about
very typical childhood stuff.
Yeah, but that was
the era.
That was the time of the Commodore 64, and we had the ZX Spectrum. That was our one, the Sinclair Spectrum, and we had this little game we used to play on the computer. It was a strategy game, and it's called Rebel Star, and this game would last 5-6 hours. Right? He would come over on a Friday night, and we would put whatever, you know, of our latest hard rock albums, whatever it was, you know, with some Van Halen's playing in the background. We're playing this Rebel Star 4 or 5 hours. Instantly, drinking coffee all night long. When we were and no problem going to sleep at that point. I never understood that. Like years later, I think back and I go, we would sit there and drink 4 or 5 cups of coffee on a Friday night until midnight and sleep fine, but whatever. Anyway, so this game, and then I moved to the US and everything. Through each different platform, now we're on the Mac platform, we have emulators and we still play this game.
That is so cool.
So we've been playing this game now since we were 12, right? And, and so what we do is we email each other a move, you know, and he's he works in the computer field, so he's super busy and I'm super busy. Sometimes it'll be a couple of weeks before the move gets sent back. So one game now lasts sometimes 6 months to a year. So we still play that same, but it's so funny that he's this, you know, very high tech computer guy, and here we are playing this game that was created in 1982. You know, so it's pretty funny.
I think this is the crowning moment of nerd on Everyone Loves Guitar. I think this is it, man. I think you are the winner right now. You should see this movie called Tag. It's about these guys that are in their mid-30s and they've been or 40s, playing tag for 30 years. We just started watching on Netflix. It's John Hamm. It's kind of funny.
I think we have to talk about something cool now to offset it.
This is the crowning nerd moment, though, for sure, man. What kind of work did your dad do?
He was an insurance agent, and very interesting. Not what you think of when you typically think of insurance agents, because of the time. I think he worked for that company for 30 plus years, and he what he would do is he would have his day of work where he would go and do calls and stuff. But back then, that industry was all about relationships with the families, and so he would come home. We'd all have dinner together, and then 6-7 o'clock he would go out again, and he would go and do evening calls on the families, because a lot of those people were at work during the day. You know, and he didn't want to do this stuff over the phone. He wanted to have these relationships with people. So he would go. So
he's a great role model for you for that.
Oh, huge role model for work.
That's smart.
Ridiculous work ethic. You know, and also probably the most positive person I've ever met. You know, he just doesn't complain. It's just not in his nature.
That's great, man.
So, and then he retired from that, and he did Meals on Wheels for 10 years. You know, taking food to the elderly and stuff like that.
So cool.
now he's properly retired. So he's actually he plays guitar, although he came to it, just in the last maybe 10 years or so. He started playing, so he just does it for fun. So that's super cool.
That's great, man. So you could play with your dad once in a while.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really nice, man. That's awesome.
No, he's fantastic. He but yeah, that work ethic was definitely there. Never complained about going out, and it's kind of sad because in that industry, in the last few years, it became all about getting new leads, and they were forced to carry these laptops around, and the whole industry just changed from what it was, and probably in part because I'm romanticizing it a little bit,
sure.
in this side town, but it was like that. I mean, these when his clients would have, events in their lives, they would invite him to them and stuff. So it was definitely more of a relationship. I mean, you never have something like that now.
What, was it like health insurance or life insurance or
all kinds of insurance? Yeah.
That's really cool. And he would go around at night, if I'm understanding this, and he would collect money. They would
and renew policy. But you go and sit and have a cup of tea and renew a policy with them and talk to them about their lives and stuff.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
very cool. Because because my wife's mom is still over there, so she's telling me about some of these things,
Yeah.
That's really, did they come and visit you?
Oh, yeah.
That's nice. They must love it.
Especially with the granddaughter.
That's right.
So, love it. Yeah, they usually come out once a year, and I try to get back there. It's been a while. Since I had my daughter, it's been a while to get back there, but I was back there last year for a little bit, but yeah, I try to get back when I can.
That's good.
It's just a busy time, but I usually see him once a year.
Very cool.
Yeah.
My wife booked her flight.
My mum's a landscape gardener, even though she's in her 70s.
Awesome. Hey, that's great, man. Well, I mean,
in England,
that'll keep her young.
Terrain, so yeah, she's kind of a bit of a Viking. She just kind of refuses to age. So
that's great.
Yeah,
that's great. What are some of the bigger obstacles that you've had to overcome throughout this process of your music career, either personally, music related, or business related, outside of obviously the moves, which I tell you, man, I give you a lot of credit. That was, to start over twice is not easy, and to have the enthusiasm, and in a sense you had the template, so you kind of knew what to do. That being said, knowledge and application, that's where all the energy comes in. It's not easy to do it.
Yeah. Well, I would say as well that we used to play 200 plus gigs a year in St. Louis. And
holy shit.
And we would travel Arkansas, and I have some Blues Brothers style stories. But
we pack of cigarettes, a 6-pack of beer, and a tank of gas.
And stuff. I mean, it was very surreal playing those places. This is real. This really exists. Like people asking you if you want to have some moonshine with them and stuff. I mean, I'm unbelievable. Nice. But anyways, I would say though that template was different to LA, because I sort of came to LA thinking, I'm sure I can get some gigs that pay and everything. And LA is not a paid gig town. It's more like you pay to play, So it's so there is a difference in LA now. The way it is. The venues are. Most of us have to go outside of LA to play if you want to make any money. Anyway, obstacles. I would say a big one, and this is one I don't really talk about with people usually. Is health stuff. When I was very young, 16, 17, I developed high blood pressure and cholesterol problems like I was 70 years old instead of 16 years. And that's been right through. And there's been I'd say the last 10 years, maybe more, I have this thing that comes on maybe once a month or once every couple of months where my body just sort of starts to shut down, and I feel like I haven't gone to sleep for 3 days. And I've seen every doctor, I had every test you can imagine. Some have described it as chronic fatigue syndrome. Others have said that doesn't even exist. I've had sleep apnea tests. I mean, the whole thing, it goes on. I mean, this is a long process, literally 10 years of tests and everything. Nobody can figure anything out for it. And so I've sort of just accepted it now, and right now I'm not in a position where I want to pay for any more tests either, and I've just sort of accepted it. But so that has been the biggest obstacle to overcome, because I'm actually in a phase of it right now. And so you just have to push through. You just have to ignore it, and because it's like I could literally go to bed for 2 days and be fine doing that. But of course I never would. So that has been the thing, and it's the anger and frustration at the medical community. I mean, it's not their fault, but it doesn't. That's just an instinct.
It's terrible,
Why can't you figure this out? Why can't you give me? Is there nothing I can do to change this? So that has been a big obstacle. But now I'm just kind of like, okay, it's coming on. I feel it. It's going to be here for a few days, and then it'll go away again. It's super bizarre, but that. Although when I've talked to my friends about this, they'll say, "Well, you have more energy than anyone we know," so that kind of balances the playing field.
No, but have you thought about looking into like gluten free or something like that?
Yeah, that is something that could be. That is something that could be part of it. The issue is, though, I have such a busy life at the moment that these things take time to do them properly. And that's probably the last thing I've yet to try is that.
Man, I would look at the diet and get back to exercising, man.
Yeah.
Because I've read, I'm not a guy who believes, I shouldn't say believes. I think that there's a lot more to unconventional medicine that is not given credit. And just for me, I've eaten super, super, super clean over the years, and I know that has helped me. I just know it because I just see how my energy is, and give that a shot because
I think that's the last of the things I think I can try because I've tried everything else you can think of. So
and
so that one, but I'm not really a woe is me type. I mean, there's you see people with real problems, and that's not a real problem. That's just something you can I can ride through it. I would say the other thing would be I would say frustration at people's lack of work ethic, flakiness, and just general incompetence. I know this makes me sound like an arse. But,
get off the grass.
no, it's just like sometimes I have unrealistic expectations that people are going to get back to me in a certain time frame, do what I ask them to do, whether this is a musician I've hired, whether this is a booking situation, whether this is business through one of the companies I work with. I constantly get myself annoyed at how people are not on the same time frame that I am, which I now realize is unrealistic.
Yeah, it's your time frame is that. Yeah, I totally get that. My kids taught me not to have expectations. Not that like my kids are losers and no, but like, you raise 3 kids and you think they're going to do certain things. And I realize I have no right to think that, to be honest. Actually getting divorced helped too, because when I realized, I'm like, you know what, in my mind, my ex-wife had these qualities and she shouldn't. And then I was like, you know what, really, who the fuck am I to say what qualities she has? Even if I'm quote unquote right, it's not my business really, and that was like the start of it, but dropping expectations for me, like lowered my stress dramatically. It doesn't mean I still don't think, man, but so now I have a different approach. Like I know I'm going to have to make 4 phone calls for this. I just adjust. Absolutely. I adjust me, like what my role is going to be in the equation, but because I totally understand that it is frustrating. It's because if you're like a type A and you're like, man, let's get shit done.
Right.
And you're like, why aren't you? Because that's the way it is.
Funnily enough, I don't have those expectations with my daughter. Like being a dad has changed a lot for me in the most positive way, and to me, I right from the start, I was like, well, I have no interest in reading parenting books. I'm going to do this my way, and as long as she's happy, anything goes for that. So I have no expectations with her, I feel so privileged to even be in the same room with her. I really am.
Nice.
I just, she's the love of my life, that little girl, so it's nice. I don't really have expectations for her for that as long as she's happy and healthy,
I think that's
but the business expectations are something else. But I agree with you. Over time, I've started to do that. Like, this is going to take 20 calls. This isn't going to happen, and then that does help a lot. I think that's a really good point you made to change your own, because it's kind of like that thing. You can only control what you can control.
That's the only thing you can do anyway, man. It's like trying to fucking change the price of lettuce and whatever the soup. I mean, seriously, it's exactly like that. It's like, okay, so I have zero control. Let me just do what I can do. And, So if you had to go back and give advice to young, and by the way, you mentioned earlier that your dad was positive. You're like super positive dude, man. You give out that vibe even on your social media, like specifically when you're with your daughter, and I'm obviously here now that I'm getting to know you, you're a very fucking positive guy. It's real good to be around a guy like you. So.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Rob. Advice to your younger self, if you were open to it, what
probably not to be so damn obsessive. Right? Probably not. See, this is a double-edged sword as well. I was talking with a friend of mine about this quite recently, actually. This is a double-edged sword as well, because on the one hand, I feel like the only reason I've managed to push my career forward is in part due to part of that. The obsessive nature, not letting it go. But on the other hand, there's a line that you can cross. Like when I'm mixing one of my songs or working, I'm terrible. I mean, I am that guy that I don't sleep well to begin with, and I'm that guy that, like, 3 o'clock in the morning, I wake up and I go, oh, I've got to take off something on that snare, and I will literally go out, fire up the session, get into Logic, and I will adjust the snare drum, and I'm like, fuck's sake, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Could I not have done that in the morning? I am that bad. So, I mean, I'm getting better at it, I think. But yeah. But at the same time, it's funny because I'll give you an example. I was, for my Seven Voices EP, was a really good EP, I think, that I recorded with my Eclectic Trio and worked really, really hard on the mixes. And I got it mastered by a sort of a fairly high-profile mastering engineer, and
in LA.
I sent it to. I think he was in Nashville, but when he sent it back, I was hearing this distortion in the in the file, and I thought, well, this guy is like, one of the top industry masters, that this can't be happening. It must just be my system or anything. And so, I start listening to it on everything. I start listening to it through different EQs, and it's still there, right? And then I start playing it for people, and they're going, I can't hear it. I don't know what you're talking about. So yeah. But here's the thing. I knew it was there, I could hear it. And I started playing to a couple of musician friends of mine. They're like, oh yeah, I hear it too. So I go back to the guy, we go back and forth, and he's kind of like, no, this is done, So what I ended up doing was accepting the file, and then I did a version of it myself to take the distortion out, and then printed it. So, it's like, I don't know. It's like, I'm not wrong.
No, but if you hear it, it's your music.
You hear it, it's your music. Yeah. So I don't know. I would probably tell my younger self to be less obsessive and absolutely be more present in the moment. That would be the big one. Be more present in the moment. I think these days, again, being a dad has really helped with that, because you can't be selfish and be a good parent.
Man, that is not. And I'll tell you what. I hate when we go out to dinner and you see, like, we're always alone now because our kids are grown, unless they're with us, which is rare. But, and you see a family and mom and dad are on their cell phone and the fucking kids are on their cell phone.
Oh, I know. It's horrible.
And I'm like, why are you at the restaurant? You could do this at home.
I just think it's bizarre when I see a lot of young couples here in LA out for meals with each other, and they're both staring down at the stuff and not speaking at all. It blows my mind,
Yeah, we always have rules. We're not talking about the kids because that's what we argue about, and we leave our cell phones down. So and it's weird because, like, in the first 10 minutes, it's like, oh, what are we talking about? I'm like, fuck, let's talk about the next vacation we got to go on. I don't give a shit. When we're gonna power through these 10 minutes and then we're gonna be fine, And then it's like, okay, everything's cool. It's just because I don't want to go out and I don't want to do that. I want to have a nice memory of the night and just be present. Yeah,
you're right. Yeah, no, I think that would be the big one. I would tell myself to be more present. Not that I wasn't present with technology, but just because my mind is wandering to, music or projects or whatever. So
you're
be really,
driven,
really,
man. You're driven. Yeah, it's hard to
be really present. It's funny. I have a thing where I refuse to Google something I can't remember for 24 hours because I feel like it'll stave off dementia. So I actually force myself to. And you know what? It's really funny. Most time, I'd say 99% of the time, I do remember it. whatever it is I'm trying to think of, as opposed to the easy fix. Now, what was that?
That's great. I hope that works for you.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah. So probably the being more present and being less obsessive.
Those are very cool, man. Hey, you're a teacher and a very active teacher. So I wanted to ask you, what are the 3 biggest mistakes that guitar players make, in your opinion?
That's an excellent question. Really, really good question. I think the first one, and this one is kind of funny because even though I work for True Fire and I might even get involved with some of Musician Institute's online teachings, we're talking about maybe doing some other stuff as well. The first one is the musician's ADD, as I call it, and that is that I see this with students all the time. Not so much the MI students because they're sort of locked into their curriculum a little bit more, but my private students over the last 25 years or so, I see this a lot. I say to them, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to meet again in 2 weeks, and I want you to work on the major scale, as an example, the major scale in one position of the neck, but taking it through 12 keys. And I'm going to give you a super fun jam track to do this with, so it doesn't feel like you're sitting there with a metronome. It's not going to be, I want you to make music with it. I want you to try and continue a melody from one key to the other, but we're going to do it in one place on the neck, right? That's all I want you to do. 2 weeks. Come back and see me in 2 weeks, right?
So you tell them, like, I want you to do it in the C position for the next, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Do it in the C position, exactly, all right? But take it through the different keys. And then what happens is, I'll see the person in 2 weeks and they'll say, I did that for about 20 minutes and then I saw this really great lick online. Right? Or they say, I heard this, I read this article that said you can become the guitarist you've always wanted to be in 3 seconds. And so to be fair, it's like I get like this is one of the reasons why I apart from posting the reason I post stuff with my daughter and I is because I have a ton of friends in England and that's a way for them to sort of stay connected to that. But I really don't surf through Facebook. I just haven't got the time, Yeah. And so but I hear people doing that and these things pop up and then it's like, oh, here's a lick I've always wanted to learn. And then I say to them, okay. I say, so let's say there's a Jimmy Page lick you always wanted to learn, right? Did you learn the lick? Yes, I did. Okay. Can you play the lick in different places on the neck? No. Can you play the lick in different keys? No. Did you take the lick and play over a jam track and try to use parts of the lick and then try to bring your own rhythm to it? No. Did you take just 4 notes of that lick and see what you could do with that in different musical contexts? You see, so there's nothing wrong with learning a lick. That's a great thing to do. I mean, we all need vocabulary. But my argument is, whatever you do, are you really going to retain it? And is it something that's going to come out in your playing in a year from now? And if the answer is no, then you're not practicing it correctly. Yeah. So that's the learning ADD, getting sidetracked by other courses. Sorry, True Fire. Other
bright, flashy light syndrome.
Whatever it is, that's the biggest one I see, and so I really have a mission to try to keep people on track because, and let me just say as well that I'm guilty of it, just like everybody else. One of the reasons it's taken me so long to get to the point where I realize that there are certain fundamental things that if you learn them properly, they will serve you so well, is that I didn't do that for years. For years, I learned exotic scales that I never used. I learned this great lick that maybe I used once and then I forgot. So I'm the worst. I've offended in all these ways, but I have learned over time that there is a method that will help you, So that would be the first one, not getting sidetracked, The second one would be music is not competition. And what I mean by that is I often hear students say, oh, I just heard such and such play, I'm going to quit now. I've never once had that reaction. I have the opposite reaction. I just heard Jeff Beck, right? I went to see Jeff Beck. I've seen Jeff Beck a bunch of times, but every time I see Jeff Beck, it's like a religious experience for me.
It really is.
It brings me to tears. I just think it's amazing. And it transcends, it's not even about the guitar. It transcends all of that. There's no one going, is he playing an E flat? There's none of that.
No.
It's like a beautiful emotional thing. So, when people say it's about competition, go listen to Jeff Beck and you're not going to be thinking, oh, he has this great technique, or he has this. It's not about that. It's I don't understand where people start thinking of music as competition. That makes no sense to me at all.
Yeah.
So this idea of if I see someone, it makes me want to throw my guitar against the wall. That's got to go. I always recommend that book. Have you heard of that book, Effortless Mastery, by Kenny Werner?
By who?
Kenny Werner.
No.
Really, really, it's actually a really good book in different walks of life as well as music. But but he happens to be a jazz pianist, and it's just a book about getting out of your own head and realizing if you make a mistake on a gig, nobody dies. You're not a brain surgeon. And it's just a really healthy way to look at music and life. And so anyone that's getting too frustrated by comparing themselves to other people, that's a good book to check out. Effortless Mastery
by Kenny Werner.
Kenny Werner, yeah.
Warner, okay.
Yes, Werner. Werner.
Great.
It's my funny accent.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, you know what I mean. Like, do you have? I mean, have you had any of those moments, or do you feel the opposite usually?
I don't think anything. Well, because I've been in business over a long time, and I've seen a lot of people that are much better than me at doing something or make more money. So I don't think anything's a competition. I'm my biggest competitor is me.
Absolutely.
That's just my personality.
Yeah, but that's actually unusual. I mean, I feel the same way, but that's not the norm. A lot of people get very bent out of shape about, like somebody said to me, I bet it's overwhelming teaching all these kids at MI that have this great technique, and it's like it's the opposite. They actually do have like a lot of them have way better technique than me, way. And
I've heard that from every teacher I've interviewed, whether it's at MI or Berkeley.
Yeah.
So
because they pushed that so hard. And see, I have a bit of a regret that I didn't spend more time on that when I was a kid. Because when I discovered alcohol and girls, a lot of time went by. A lot of time went by. And in England, those things happen quite early, especially the alcohol.
Yeah.
So, a lot of time went by. So I wish I'd been a bit more studious, because there's something that happens in those formative years where if you're not working on technique like that, it's much harder to get back to it later. Like I don't have the right hand that I really want guitar wise, but then you adapt. You go, okay, well, maybe I'm going to use a little bit more legato. Maybe I'm going to do this and do that to hear the sounds that I'm hearing in my head. I don't ever feel envious of a student. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I like when I see one of the students play really, really cleanly with great technique, I think it's fantastic. And I'm like, right, you got that. What can I help you on to work on that maybe you don't know? How can we take this and take it to another level?
And also your students aren't sitting there saying, "Oh, I'm better than my teacher here." So that's not those guys.
No,
they're not sitting there thinking that. No, that's not. They know that they're probably aware that they're going to be better than some people on certain things, but they're there to learn from you. So that's the nature of the relationship,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nobody's thinking that. And if they are, you know what? Let them get out of there, man.
Right, exactly.
No, seriously.
Well,
I mean,
if they get out there and they have that attitude in the real world, they're not going to do very well in the music business, because it's just not. I mean, I'd say 99% of the musicians that I believe are the true, the ones that really, really have their heart in it and have always had their heart in it. They're the nicest people in the world for the most part.
I would agree.
Now, I have to say that seems to be in the jazz and fusion world. That seems to be particularly true. I don't know if that's quite so true in the when you get up to the more kind of the rock and pop world. I've met a few of those guys that perhaps aren't quite as
really
as warm and warm and friendly. But it just depends. But yeah, I mean, most of those people, most of the great musicians, like I read a lot of musician biographies and other biographies, sports biographies, and I really like autobiographies, and and most of the people that I greatly admire, whether it's I'm a huge Michael Brecker fan, the saxophone player, and he was always learning, always dissatisfied with his own playing, not to the point of throwing his horn across the room, but he was always saying, I could do better, always learning, always on the journey, and that's the way I feel about it,
Most of the guys I've talked to, with rare exception, really rare exception, everybody feels the same way. I mean, everybody I've spoken to is extremely like. I just don't understand where this competitive sport aspect, and maybe in part because of the 80s and the shred thing and everything. But see, even that people
to me, they miss the point of that. Like when I hear people lumping some of those players in together, it makes no sense. Like Steve Vai sounds nothing like Yngwie, and I think they're both great in their own way, and it's just, it doesn't make sense. Like those guys were never thinking of it like who can play the fastest or whatever. It's just not a competitive sport. It's music.
I think coping skills with different people, perhaps, they're maybe not equipped to. I don't know. I don't know. It seems weird to me, but
yeah, and that's an interesting thing too. It's this idea of like I'm very seldom satisfied with a gig, and so I do put quite a lot of pressure on myself with that. And I know, like hanging out with Scott Henderson at MI, and he's the worst for that, right? Have you heard about his? He's the worst for.
Well, I heard a story yesterday that when he was a teacher. Yeah. Back in the day, there were guys who were, if they were screwing up, he'd go out to McDonald's and get an application. and if some of the students were really like fucking up, he'd say, "Hey man, here,
wow,
you need to consider this," and he'd give them the application to McDonald's. So, but I actually got referred to him recently, so I'm going to meet him, I'm assuming. So,
oh, good. Yeah. Make sure you tell him hello from me. He's great. He's still at MI.
Yeah.
He still does open counseling there. Yeah. He's a character. The thing with his, there's a lot of sarcasm there as well, but yeah, he's the worst. Like I've gone down to see him at the Baked Potato or Alba's, and he'll come off and he'll play a great show, and he'll come off the gig and he'll be like, "Oh shit, it was so bad," It's like, wow. So he tells me that he's working on that. He's getting a little bit more, a little easier on himself.
But usually, as you get older, you get a little easier on yourself.
Yeah. If you have him on the show, I'm sure he'll talk about that. That would be interesting. But So anyway, music's not a competition. That would be the next thing. Don't be depressed by a great player. Be inspired.
Yeah. I like that. And number 3?
Number 3 would be what we musicians call gas, which is nothing to do with too much Mexican food. It's gear acquisition syndrome, right?
Yeah, totally.
At this, you're going to laugh when I tell you this. At this point in time, I own 2 electric guitars.
That's great. No, I think that's practical.
Actually, three because one's being built for me right now. So 3.
That's practical.
Yeah, unfortunately, if you're a self-employed musician living in LA, it is practical.
I mean, how many can you have?
Right.
I mean, unless you're at rock star level. No, but unless you're at rock star level, I mean, how much, you could spend and still like missing that one,
Exactly. Now, and okay, so nothing wrong with buying gear. Buying gear is fun, and talking about gear is fun, all that kind of thing. But I've had this conversation with many students over the years, and it's you got to ask yourself what you want to do. If you want to just play guitar every once in a while as a hobby, and you get as much pleasure going on gear forums and talking about gear as you do playing it, then that's totally cool, and you should enjoy that, and that's great.
Right.
But if you're coming to me and you're saying, I really want to improve, I really, really want to get to this next level, I really want to get to this point, and then you say,
if I get that custom Strat, I know I'll be able to get there.
And then you spend most of the week, like trying to decide which chorus pedal you need as opposed to touching the guitar.
Yeah.
Then that's not going to help you. So I think, there's such a lot of, again, the internet's been so helpful and not helpful at the same time with this, because all these rig rundowns and all these cool gear videos that pop up on your browser. I mean, there's a ton of stuff to get. Once it's like the musical ADD, you get sidetracked by it. Right?
Totally.
You go, let me just watch this video. Oh, if you like this, I like that. And the next thing you know, 2 hours have gone by. So, and again, I'm not saying that's bad. I'm saying it's bad if you're really trying to progress on the instrument, then that's going to get in the way a little bit. And the big joke is, I mean, I've been in a room with Eric Johnson where he's played through a tiny little Fender amp. It sounds exactly like Eric Johnson.
That's cool.
Like, we all know this, right? It's 70% of it's in the fingers. So it's don't get too obsessed with gear. I wrote an article for True Fire's Riff magazine called Controlling Your Gas, which I went into quite a lot of detail about all that. But
I think that's a good. Is that on your website? Is there a link to that on your website?
I think there is a link to it on the tuition page on the website. Yeah. It's there's nothing wrong with talking about gear. Gear's fun.
Yeah.
But there's only so much time, isn't there? That would be the.
Well, also, I think the level of your play should dictate your gear, because I mean, like all the guys I'm talking to, you guys are professional musicians. You're going to buy a chorus pedal or the new pedal, whatever you need, because you need it. But like a bedroom guitar player like me, what am I going to like that? I need to be a better player. That's, like buying a pedal is not going to make me, like what you said, I want to get neck time,
Yeah.
That's what I need. So.
Yeah, and I have nothing against gear. I mean, it's great, but
no, it's fine.
I'm sure like, going to be the edge. Where you're at, your gear is actually going to be your sound, and that's going to be a thing. Fair enough, but
but that's good, man. The 3 biggest mistakes, is to summarize: musicians, ADD, not paying attention, getting sidetracked. Number 2, thinking music is a competition when it's not, and number 3 is gear acquisition syndrome.
Yeah, and to the first one, I would say, just to anybody listening that transcribing is really, really helpful, and you don't have to transcribe like whatever genre you like. Let's say you love blues, right? So if you're listening to an Albert King record and you hear a lick that you just really like, transcribe it, right? I mean, chances are it's going to be out of the minor pentatonic scale, right? And so transcribe it, but figure out what the chord is behind it. Right, figure out why that note works on that chord and why you like it so much, and then try playing the same lick in different spots on the neck, different keys, different rhythm, and then the more you do that, the more that will become part of you. And then what you might find is in a year, if you're playing along to a jam or jamming with friends or a gig or something, that lick will come out and it won't sound anything like the lick you transcribed, which is awesome because now it's you.
It's yours, yeah, and you own it, and you know why you played it. You
have to put up a little bit of vocabulary, but you also don't want to be a clone of somebody else. I remember when I was in St. Louis, the Stevie Ray Vaughan thing was happening, and oh my God, like there was this area called Soulard that were all these blues bars and everything, and we would play in one, and there'd be all these other bands in the others, and honestly, like 5 out of 6 of them would be SRB clones, and it made no sense to me whatsoever, no sense at all. I mean, those guys were good players, but there was no originality to it.
Yeah.
So, that's been my thing ever since that thing I mentioned earlier about Toto. When I heard Lukather hit, I hear him hit a note on a chord, and it just made the most sense in the world to me. And then a friend of mine lent me some Larry Carlton records, and I hear the same thing. And then that got me sort of into jazz, and it was like, like finding the note is kind of like my life's work, if you like. But finding the note in the moment that will never happen again. That to me is like the reason to get up in the morning.
Very cool, man. Hey, Rob, so are there any players who influence your playing that people might be surprised to hear?
In terms of surprised, I don't know. Right from the get-go, I was always very open to different styles and different types of players. But I guess that maybe one that might be surprising would be Prince. I'm a huge Prince fan and got to see him live a couple of times. And from a very early age, even when I was first in that sort of hard rock vein, and when you're like that as a 15-year-old, you can be quite narrow for a while with your taste. For whatever reason, Prince always worked with me, which is kind of funny because it's the opposite of some of that music, But yeah, so Prince maybe, but not necessarily so much about his guitar playing, even though he was a phenomenal guitar player. More just about the persona and the bands he had and the songwriting, the arranging. And I've never seen anybody command a stage like that ever. And I've seen I've seen Aerosmith, I've seen a ton of great bands, Van Halen, and but Prince just took it to a whole nother level in terms of the show. Have you ever seen him live?
No, I didn't. Yeah. So it was engagement, or just his show was so over the top, like.
His show was so good, and just like he was so focused on it from the very moment it started to the moment it ended. And then, of course, he went off and did an after hours 3-hour gig like he used to do as well. But just the sort of the commitment to being in the moment, and nothing was left. I mean, he had these big open improvised sections, but he was still band leading every part of it, and it was just amazing.
Yeah, I know he prepared quite a bit. I mean, you could see he was a super intense guy.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so that would
good,
be one.
interesting, man.
And then maybe one of the other ones would be, I have this other side to me where a lot of, like I'm a really big Joni Mitchell fan, really big Neil Finn, Crowded House, the New Zealand, Australian.
Yeah.
And people like that, Sean Mullins, the acoustic
Yeah.
guy. I love these people, and I've been listening to them for, again, since the very early years, and they're guitar players. But I never really think of them as guitar players. Like when I go and see, I just saw Shawn Mendes a couple of weeks ago. It never occurs to me to go, oh, I wonder what tuning that's in. Or when I listen to Joni Mitchell, I'm never ever thinking of that. And it would never occur to me to actually work out any of her music, because it's almost like I don't want to touch it. It works on such a sort of an emotional level with me, with her music particularly. So those would be big influences. Maybe more on the songwriting, because I have that side of me where I write acoustic songs and do some of that stuff too. And that's really not so much about, certainly not about thinking, oh, I'm going to find this great guitar part here, But definitely those people as. But again, I guess that's more of just a musical influence than a guitar influence.
Yeah, that's cool.
But guitar influences, it was like I say, it was a lot of the hard rock guys, and then as soon as I started hearing that crossover, from Larry Carlton, Steve Lukather, these kind of guys. Oh, and then I would say in the last 10 years, in the world of sort of jazz, I actually prefer listening to saxophone players than I do traditional jazz guitar players. So
I've heard that a lot.
That's a big influence. Like Michael Brecker, Bill Evans, the sax player Bill Evans, even though I like the pianist as well, and Chris Potter, people like that. I find their phrasing fascinating, and there's so much energy in it, and for whatever reason, don't get me wrong, I can sit down and listen to Wes Montgomery all day, and it's great. But I equate the energy of those sax players more, I think, with the fusion style guitar, if you want to call it that, for the guitar players.
The F word.
The F word again. Than the traditional jazz guys. So there's something about the energy and tone of the saxophone players that really gets me going.
A lot of guys I've interviewed that are jazzers at heart. Have told me that in either new guys or old saxophone players, they've really been influenced by that phrasing, tone, same thing you said.
I think in part because when we come up, especially if you come up in a sort of the blues and blues rock, you spend so much time in that pentatonic thing, right? And and I've written courses and worked for years with students on breaking out of that and finding new ways to think about it. And when you hear a saxophone player phrase, often it's the same notes, right? We all share the same 12 notes, but there's something about the phrasing and the rhythm that is just counterintuitive to what a guitarist might do, probably just because of the way the notes lay on the guitar. So I recommend, if anybody's feeling really frustrated with their phrasing, I recommend transcribing another instrument, whether it's saxophone, whether it's piano, whatever, and just take a little lick and just really look at the rhythm of it, and even that will probably inspire you in a new way, on your instrument.
That's a good idea, to do something totally different. That's great,
it's just coming at it from a different perspective, I think.
Hey, this is like probably a silly American question that people ask people from England. Is there a better selection of guitars here or in England?
I would probably say here, just because there's just more of them here,
Okay.
But because in England, there's little each little town or city has its own guitar store and everything, but really the big street is Denmark Street in London, right? And so in that street, you've got tons of guitar stores, and that's super fun to walk down there and go in those, But I would say here, like living in Hollywood, if you go into the vintage room at Guitar Center, it's fantastic. It's ridiculously overpriced, but it's fantastic. It's kind of fun just to be around those instruments. But I have kind of a love-hate thing with vintage stuff anyway. Like the guitars I'm playing are new guitars built to have that played in, vintage feel.
The exotic stuff.
The exotic, yeah. I have one of those. I'm having another one built, and they have that sort of relict appearance, but also the necks feel broken in and worn in. And to me, they play better than a lot of actual vintage guitars I picked up. It's just a personal preference thing.
Sure.
Just that thing, like just because something's old doesn't necessarily make it good.
No, totally, for sure, man.
Yeah.
And you have to know how to take care of that a vintage. Like I couldn't buy a vintage guitar because I'm not willing to put any more than I can buy a vintage automobile. I'm not willing to put the time and effort into figuring all that stuff out, you know.
Well, yeah, and I always think you'd be scared to take it out of the house, you know, as well. It's like, and my whole thing is like they're meant to be. I mean, my guitars over the years, they always look like they're on the verge of falling apart. You know, they get a lot of use.
Which is great.
Funny story, actually. I had a red Fiesta Red Strat, and back when my blues bass trio were doing the 200 shows a year or whatever. I used that guitar for almost all of it for years and years and years and years, and it was just a straight ahead custom shop 1960 reissue Fiesta Red Strat, and I changed the pickups in it, did all loads of work on it, but it looked pretty new at the start. Well, anyway, at the end of that, people used to come up to me and say, "Is that one of those relics?"
Oh, they thought it was really.
No, it was just, I've just played it for 10 years.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny. But,
very cool.
Yeah, but it was a lovely guitar.
Hey, Desert Island Discs, in no particular order, and knowing this can change tomorrow, what will be the first 3 records that come to your mind?
That is so difficult.
I know.
That's just, I mean, it would probably be a different 3 every day.
Yeah, you know? I'm sure, depending on your mood.
But, well, for the, am I allowed to have a guitar on the island with me? Because that might change the choices.
Well, because if you have a guitar, you could jam to the record.
Well, yeah, and if it was something very guitar-centric, I might be really inspired to want to play a lot, you know. Whereas
I think you need a guitar if you're on an island alone.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, I would probably pick. I would pick something from the Zappa catalog, but
oh wow,
choosing which one. I mean, what is it, like 90 now? I think, or more than that. So maybe one of the live compilations when he had like Jean-Luc Ponty and George Duke in the band. So like there's one, what's it called, the Helsinki tapes. It's like from '73, or You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore, Volume 2, I think it is. And then I really like the.
Wow, you're really into the Zappa.
Yeah, I'm really into the Zappa. Wow. I really like the '88 band he had with all the horns as well. So maybe I think there was like 3 or 4 albums, compilations of those. Make a Jazz Noise Here, one of them was called, I think. So I'd pick one of those. One of those Zappa albums, because the Zappa album would keep me. It's one of those things I could keep listening to. I don't know if this is like a rescue situation, how long I'm going to be on this island, but I could keep going back to that album and not get bored because there's so much in it, you know.
That's cool.
I may be overthinking the desert island.
I mean, you might be, but it's your island, so it just,
right.
You have that right.
So, yeah, probably a Zappa record, and then I would pick a Joni Mitchell record because that would be awesome just to sort of like sit there and look at the water
and listen to Joni Mitchell.
Yeah, maybe like Court and Spark or Hejira. Maybe Hejira because it's got Jacko on it. Because I'm really a big
Jacko fan.
Big Jacko fan, Weather Report. And if I wasn't going to have a Weather Report album, I could at least access Jacko through Hejira. So
and you are thinking this shit out. This is good.
Yeah. And then the third one would be so difficult because like part of me wants to go with one of those albums that as a kid was, one of those rock and roll albums as a kid that really did it for me. But, I think I'm going to pick Stephen Wilson album. Stephen Wilson?
No, who is that?
He's the guy who used to be in Porcupine Tree, that band, and now he has a solo career. And it's kind of like progressive rock is one way you describe it. But it's very emotional kind of music, and it's very British. It has a lot of British kind of lyrics to it. And so I would pick the album that's called The Raven That Refused to Sing.
Is that Stephen STEV or PH? Because I want to look that up.
Yeah, VEN. Yeah, STEV.
The Raven Refused to Sing. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, so I might pick that, and that also crosses over into that kind of. It has a bit of a fusion element to it in places as well, so that sort of ticks that box,
Very cool, man.
Tomorrow I'll give you 3 completely different. It'll probably be a Gary Moore album tomorrow.
It's impossible, I think, to answer this question if you're like a music fan. I mean, it would be pretty dire straits if you only had 3 records to listen to.
I'm a very obsessive listener as well. Like I'll go off on a tangent and then I'll probably listen to that artist for 3 weeks straight, and really, really dig in, and then I'll go somewhere completely different. That's kind of how. Do you tend to do that, or do you tend to be across the board? No,
I tend to binge listen. I tend to listen to, like, now I'm listening to Freddie King, but some people I'll listen to be in the rotation more than others, but I tend to listen to a bunch of stuff by one artist.
When I first started listening to Freddie King, it was amazing to me how influenced Clapton was by that. It was kind of shocking.
Yeah. He's
just a lot of that in there, isn't there?
He is, but I don't, I think what Freddie does is so unique, man. He's so original and soulful, and his tone was so, he played with the steel finger pick and the two, I think he had a steel pointer, a pick on his pointer, and a regular pick, one of those wraparound picks, a thumb pick.
Right. Yeah.
So
the tone's phenomenal. Yeah.
And he, whether he was,
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you could definitely tell around that Blues Breakers time that Clapton had been absorbing a lot of that, taking that, because there's definitely a lot of nods towards that in that sound, isn't there? But
yeah, for sure.
King, amazing.
It's
so
like
good.
Stevie Ray Vaughan in his first album with Albert King. I think there was such a heavy influence on it. You could hear the parallels, but yeah, for sure, man.
Definitely. And those Albert King albums, I really like Stax stuff with the horns and everything. It's like
great stuff, man.
Really good.
Powerful dude.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Hey, so let's go to the last section, the therapy section of the of the interview. What's the most important thing you've learned about yourself throughout this whole journey for you? In reflecting,
probably that since I started, since this became a career, and I made that decision it was going to be a career. That I am very resilient and sort of won't take no for an answer, almost to a point of my detriment, So that probably partly that the resilience I've found out, that if I can't get from point A to point B this way, then I'll find a different way to do it.
That's great.
Even if it takes me a few years to do that, So that would be, framing it in a positive way. That would probably be the answer to that, just because it's not about, a very small part of this is actually about playing the guitar. It's much more about diversifying and finding a way to have a career, but also still maintain that love of playing the guitar. Because if you lose that, then you could just be doing anything, couldn't you? Really?
You could be an accountant or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, I think I think it's very. I think, man, I've said this before. Life is tough. If you're not resilient, you're just not going to make it in anything. You have to have some resilience, and some people have more resilience than others. But that's important, man. If you want to survive.
Well, I think the danger is if you find something you really love, then you have to. If you're then going to say, well, I'm going to use this thing that I really love in part to pay my bills and take care of my daughter and do all these other things, then that puts a lot of strain on your relationship with the thing you love.
I never thought of
that. But I'm a strange one like that too, because I'm not that I'm necessarily, the phone's not ringing for some of these opportunities, but I'm also pretty, that's why I enjoy teaching so much, because I feel I can really give myself to that 100%. But when it comes to my own music, I like writing music primarily for me, which commercially isn't necessarily the best thing to do. But I know a lot of people, especially in this town, that actually will say, oh, these songs are popular now, I'm going to write in that style. And that to me is the most alien way of thinking ever. It's just, now I've done sessions where I do, and that's a different thing.
It's a different,
then I'm being asked by the producer to do, and I'm happy to do that. But I'm talking about, if you're going to put your name on it and say, this is my music, that's just not the way I'm wired.
I don't even know that it matters anymore.
True.
What are you going to get out of it? No one really buys music. I saw this thing. It's Have you seen that thing floating around Facebook? Peter Frampton said something like, I don't know, it's 150,000 or 1,000,005 spins of "Baby I Love Your Way," and he got like $700 or something like that. Or $400. I'm probably overstating it by double.
No, there was a Beyonce one of just like that a few years ago. The same thing. I mean, I look forward to seeing my Spotify pennies show up on my account.
Well, I mean, so if you're writing music, and that is pretty alien to I don't think there's many people I've spoken to who would sit and do that, because everybody is in this for the same thing. They like playing guitar and they like expressing themselves and communicating. It seems kind of hard, contra to any of those things, trying to write a song to sell, or with that, not even to write a song to sell. If you're writing a song to sell, but it's in your style, it's kind of organic. If you're writing a song to sell because it thinks something, I don't know. I'm not a musician, so it would be unfair of me to opine on that, but I could understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. It's just sort of like saying, because I feel like that's got a lot to do with what's sort of going wrong with so-called popular music. Now, even as kids, there's always like novelty songs and some kind of, dumb music. That's always been around. That's not new.
It's like the pet rocks of
But I
music.
feel like this sort of, this kind of like flavor of the month, like it sort of started with that auto-tune thing with the Cher song, right? And then that just went on into a whole nother realm. And to me, I feel like it's an Emperor's New Clothes thing. I really think of it like that. I think there's no way somebody's listening to that and going, oh, that sounds good. I can't fathom it. Maybe it's me getting older, but it's like so I think it's then it becomes such and such name artist uses this producer that does that, and then that becomes successful. And and again that whole thing of things becoming successful now with you got like 3 or 4 companies running everything, and the music is putting Target, and the whole thing's just bizarre to me.
It's like reality TV. That's all.
Yeah,
I don't watch TV, and like when I see reality TV, I just like. It's like a trigger for me. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I just get so aggravated. I can't stand it. Right. I'm like, I just think it's it's annoying and useless. Like who wants to watch somebody else's drama? I mean, like I guess I don't know. I always just think that I'm like, man, I wish I had that much time. I would never use it doing that, but if I had that much free time that I had available to do that, it would be nice. But it
exactly.
just seems weird.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of that is, and so this, the kids now growing up seeing that that's the norm for TV. And I worry about kids growing up thinking the norm for music is just this 4 or 5 artists that are being selected, by whomever. And so that's why I was saying earlier, I always expose my daughter to every possible type of music, and sometimes she'll be like, this is really strange. And other times she'll be singing it, or something. And she just asked me to put on a Gary Willis fusion tune called Alien Head Explode. She goes, can we listen to Alien Head Explodes? And I thought, that is pretty funny.
That is pretty funny. What is that called? I'm going to Alien Head?
Alien Head Explode. Gary Willis, the bass player that was in Tribal Tech with Scott Henderson. Great band. She's just really taken by this bizarre track called Alien Head Explodes. So it's just funny to me that, but it does sort of go to that point that if you expose people to music, more people are going to like it.
Yeah.
A lot of times with my trio and, my Eclectic Trio, we play primarily just music I've written, and then we'll take a couple of other songs and do them a different way.
Right.
And I get some really positive responses from people saying, I've never heard stuff like this, or what would you call this, or how do I get into this kind of music, which just shows me that, and that's a guitar-based trio, and it just shows me that the people, if they're exposed to this stuff, they don't all have to like it, of course, but I mean, being exposed to it really, really gets people going on some of this stuff, so it's like the trick is finding a way to get people exposed to it,
Well, the unfortunately, the bad answer is probably Spotify, even though it's an accurate answer, because you listen to some of it. I think you're the one who told me how accurate was that you telling me how accurate the algorithm is?
Where the listeners are, you mean the analytics?
Yeah, like when you play it, I thought it was you. Maybe it wasn't. I'm sorry. Someone recently told me the algorithms of Spotify are really spot on. So if you put on a Alien Head Explosion and you train it to play, they'll feed you a steady diet of that. Oh yeah, right. No, I don't think it was us, but I've had a conversation about that. Yeah, absolutely. They definitely hone in because they make those daily playlists, don't they, of things that they think you'll like. Yeah, I don't know. I don't stream. I'm like the only person in America.
Oh, I have it, but I still buy CDs, which I know is laughable. But there you go.
Yeah. I don't stream, and I don't have a tattoo. I don't know what the hell's going on here.
I don't think the two are mutually exclusive,
though. Man, this is a tough question, man, for anybody. What do you like most about yourself? I had a guy on last week. He's like a very stereotypical musician. The answer goes, look, man, I have so much self-loathing. I can't answer that question. It's like a typical artist response. He was kidding. I mean, he answered it, but he was partially not kidding. It was that's what kind of made it funny. It was like, that's
hilarious. Yeah, that's a tricky one. I would say for most things, I can find a way to laugh at the absurdities of life. That would probably be it. Because I think, especially in this current political climate, if I couldn't find a way to laugh at it, I would lose my mind. So I think being able to sort of step back and go, well, look, nobody died. This isn't, we're not going to be on the street tomorrow. If it's not to that level, I can usually find something to lighten the situation by having a laugh about it, even if it seems like something that's kind of negative. So probably, being able to, using my sense of humor to get through things would be, which of course you could say is a defense mechanism, but
finding the silver lining. No, I mean, I think that's a healthy sort of optimistic way of dealing with things, man.
Yeah, I always say to people, my glass is half full unless I've finished drinking it.
There you go. No, it's so much. It's easy to look through life like that. It's easy to be negative, man, and it's a little more work to be positive. But I think the payback, the return on that investment is infinitely greter than defaulting to negative.
There was a bit of a moment of clarity. My friend, who I've mentioned a few times in this interview, was out visiting me a few years ago, and he had and we still talk, but not as much as we had been in previous years. And he had this idea of me as being in a very negative headspace and really disliking America. And so we had this big, discussion about it in a pub, obviously. And after about 5 hours of we were very thirsty that day. But, we had this big discussion about it, and it sort of opened my eyes a little bit into. I thought I was still maintaining a pretty positive outlook, but it's interesting that he was picking up on the negativity. So that was a real. He's one of the very few people on the earth that I listen to and take his take his comments to heart. So that gave me pause to think, and I thought, man, I need to sort myself out and watch out for the attitude. I think a lot of it came from. I really liked LA, and I had a lot of problems with the Midwest, and I think I was just maybe expressing a little too much negativity about my experience there.
Well, plus, you got divorced. Was this before or after your divorce?
This was after.
Oh man, anybody who doesn't understand that is just, it's really hard to be happy after you get divorced, man. I mean, it takes a while. It's just not fucking peaches and cream, man.
No, absolutely. But I think he was basing it more on before that in my behavior before that. So that was very interesting. We get very wrapped up in our own perception, don't we? And sometimes it's very important to hear what others are saying.
Yeah, sometimes only when you agree with it. I'm just kidding, of course.
Hey, that reminds me, actually, you're asking me about the 3 mistakes students make, guitar players make. I would say I'm going to add a fourth to that because it's directly related to what I just said then, and that is listening to the other musicians. Seems really, really obvious thing to say, just like listening to other people from time to time. Seems a really obvious thing to say, but it's not. It's amazing how many you can even hear it with players that play over jam tracks and things, and it's like, yeah, but you're not really listening to what the rhythm section's doing, because the rhythm section, especially if it's real people, but the rhythm section should be enlightening you as to what to play, not the other way around. You should be listening to what the chords are, what the rhythm is, and we all have those people we know that you think you're having a two-way conversation with them, but really you're just, the person's just waiting to say what they want to say next, and it doesn't matter what you say. What they say next is not going to change or actually be related to what you just said, right? So you know what I'm talking about. But musicians can be like that too. Like if you're sitting there and you're going, as soon as this solo starts, I'm going to play my F sharp arpeggio and I'm going to sweep it right up into the top, the 14th fret. I've been working on that all week. And what if the rhythm section plays something that really wouldn't fit with now? What if they change the mood or something? So I think that's really important.
Listening to the other musicians, really other players.
Yeah,
that's good advice, man. Yeah, it's funny. I was in sales for so many years, and I can identify who I'm, the character of the person I'm walking in with, reasonably quickly. And I found with people like that, the only way you have to literally cut them off and would be abrasive to other people. But I found you have to shut them up. And most of the time they'll turn around and say, oh yeah, thank you for stopping me, I'd go on forever. Like 90% of them would say that. It's really weird. I don't really get it, but, and of course this is really funny. Everybody I interview says, man, you're such a good interviewer because you don't talk. And anytime I argue with my wife, she goes, are you going to shut up and let me talk? Which
So
is like diametrically. And I know I'm behaving like that with her too. So it's like, it's kind of funny.
No, I said to you because I've listened to quite a few of these interviews, and that's one of the things I really like about it. There's a lot of space in it, and you really let the guests kind of say it. So I guess you're going to have to pretend you're interviewing your wife.
But it's only in the heat of the moment, man. You know, I'm never in the heat. I'm not like arguing with anybody that I'm interviewing. You know, it's like if we're going at it, and she's like, "You're not letting me talk." She goes, "Are you going to be quiet?" I'm like, and I always think about him like, you know, I interview people and I'm really quiet at it. And I know I can't say anything because she's 100% right. So I don't know how the hell I got on that. People not shutting up. Yeah. Thank goodness that doesn't happen often. Flip side of that, if you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
Well, we talked a little bit earlier, I think, about not being able to switch off and being kind of obsessive. So I would say that would be a big part of it. I would definitely like to, because you know, I understand, you know, that if you step away from something, you come back to it fresher. That makes perfect sense to me, and yet, you know, I have a hard time doing that. So I would definitely say that. I would say I definitely used to be too selfish as well. You know, I think that's got. I mean, I know that's improved a lot after becoming a dad. You know, but that, you know, the selfishness and definitely just kind of, you know, just being too obsessive about things.
If I had to guess, I'd say your selfishness was probably driven by your enthusiasm over what you were doing, and not your like, you know, fuck anybody else. Kind of
no. That's what I mean.
I understand that.
You know, and again, this whole thing's all wrapped up in the same thing about being mentally present in other aspects of life and not being selfish about, you know. So yeah, I agree.
It's just having more awareness. Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I think so.
Something or someone you miss from your childhood?
It's funny. One of the first things I think of is you know, crisps. Which is not a very deep answer.
That's okay though, but that's a good answer.
There's a cheese flavored crisp in the UK called Quavers, and Quavers are actually eighth notes in the US.
Like we have this whole
England has an entire different, like, crotchets and quavers. There's a whole different way of describing musical notes, which is bizarre. Again, like we said earlier, there are so many differences between the countries. It's kind of unbelievable. But so definitely those cheese-flavored crisps, quavers. If ever you're in the UK, look up the quavers.
Well, I don't eat crisps, but I tell you, Anne's going to the UK like in a couple of months.
She needs quavers.
She comes back with a suitcase full of like potato like, and her family buys it. It's like, you know, she goes, and I'm like, babe, you know, do they know that we have kitchen towels here in America? Like, fucking, you gotta be kidding me, man. Like, you know, do you know they have Q-tips in the drugstores here as well? I was like, holy shit. But so usually
consistency though, obviously.
But mostly it's loads of crisps, and it used to be beetroot.
Oh wow!
But they sell
beetroot.
Yeah, they sell beetroot here now as well.
Well, that's the thing. Like, you can get most of the Cadbury's chocolate you can get here now and everything. You know, as long as you have to check it's not.
It's different. It's different.
If it's licensed through Hershey's, you just buy it and throw it in the river. But if it's it's actual Cadbury's, you're good. Yeah, if you go to the British shops, get that. But yeah, so I mean, those kind of things. I'm not a big Hershey fan, obviously, but
nobody who's in England is. My wife's the same. She won't eat Hershey's Cadbury's.
Yeah, I don't get that. But
my kids grew up on like Easter eggs and all the, you know, stuff from the UK, not American chocolate. It's quite.
Oh, yeah, I love the big Easter eggs. That's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, and the other walnut whips.
Yep.
And a bunch of stuff. What other thing I don't eat much candy, but I used to eat this one thing. The little eggs I used to like, the chocolate eggs.
Oh yeah, those are great.
Those are great, man.
The Cadbury's mini eggs.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and it was really funny because when you're kids, there you have wine gums. You had wine gums before?
No,
it's like very difficult to describe. It's like this fruit little sweets, candies, and each one has a different alcohol name on it, which is like kids. I don't have any alcohol in them, but it's just like say like your little kid, you're having your port or your wine or your whatever. It's just
really,
I never. Yeah, it's sort of an early indication that every British person will be an alcoholic at some point. You know, it's just in the candy. It's in the candy right from the get go. You know. But yeah, so obviously that stuff I miss. But actually, I would say, and I miss my friend and friends, and my family and stuff. But I see them from time to time. The funny thing I miss, because it was quite a few years before I went back, and when I went back, I noticed that the thing I missed the most, it's kind of a strange thing to describe, was just the feeling of the landscape, the terrain. Like I went back to Canterbury where I went to college, and just and it has this oldie worldy kind of look.
Totally different.
And it's totally different. And I felt a real calmness come over me. And I went down and sat by the river where I used to go and sit with friends. And it was just, so there's something about that as well, just something about the feel of it that I miss.
I totally understand that. And it's really funny because my mother-in-law, my mom, always gives us good TV shows to watch. And so we're watching one now. It's called it's a really good British show. This one's called Unforgotten.
Okay.
So it was funny. So we were watching it last night, and I said to my wife, I said, this is really weird, but I love watching people walking down streets in England. Mm-hmm. And she kind of laughed. She goes, really? Why? I said, I don't really know. But it's what you said. It's the architecture is dramatically different. The whole, of course, the streets are opposite because of the cars. It's very different. I understand exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like a lot of the houses, because they're listed buildings, you can't make alterations to them. You can't knock parts down and do that kind of stuff. And a lot of the buildings, especially in Canterbury, there's like no right angles. They're all on a slight lean and everything. But it just has a lot of character.
Everything's so well built, though, man. I mean, it's put together really well. The bricks and it's just weird. And then it's funny. Then I see like apartment buildings. And it reminds me of being back in the Bronx.
Right.
Which what I understand is in some of them, it is just like being back in the Bronx. But
right.
It's just, I understand. It was really weird. I understand exactly what you're talking about. I mean, it's a different vibe there. And it just seems very, the oldie worldy kind of thing, I guess you said. It's very nice. Yeah.
And I'm really bad at taking holidays, vacations as well. I'm really bad. I've got to improve that. But, about I don't know, a long time ago, maybe 8 years ago, we went on this trip, and we went to Switzerland and Vienna. And Vienna was just beautiful. I really, really like Vienna a lot. And we went through the Alps and went to Italy and did this whole thing. And it's good to do that every once in a while, just as a reminder that there's a different pace of life out there. Because you tend to get wrapped up in the bubble and sort of forget it. I think. And it's like we went to this coffee shop to have breakfast, and they weren't open yet. And the guy had spoke. There was a sign; it was opening at 8 or whatever it was. And the guy's there getting ready to open, and he sees this friend of his that he hasn't seen for a while. So they don't open for 20 minutes because the two of them just want to have a catch up and a chat, and they involve us in this conversation. I just love that. I just think that's
so funny. Yeah, it's very un-American, and we're very capitalistic here. 8 o'clock, we're making money at 8:01.
Right. Yeah, it's just kind of nice to see that sometimes.
Has your daughter been over there?
She has not. No, not yet. The reason being that, and that's coming up, but the reason being that, a couple of things. One, I see babies and kids that sleep in strollers and sleep in cars. She was not one of those kids. She sleeps great in her bed, but she was never one of those kids that would just kind of conk out. And she's
high
a little
maintenance.
Bit, she's a little bit she's got some fire in her, like her dad. But
it's good. It'll serve her well, especially as a woman.
So that flights, 9, 10 hours. And then.
Oh, that's right. For you, it's more than that. It's more like, it's got to be like close to 11 or 12.
Yeah. And then, and I've never slept on a plane my entire life. Like every flight I've ever taken, I can't sleep in planes. And she seems to be a bit like that. And then where my parents and my family are from, is 2.5 hours southeast of London. So after that, then you've got to get in a car and do that. So I wanted to wait till she's maybe like 6 or 7, and we're about there now. She's going to be 6 in November. So then I'm going to start that. But I wanted to wait because I just thought it's not really fair to anyone.
Well, no, that drive, how are you going to drive 2.5 hours? That's after you fly. If you're not sleeping, it's, we did that one time. Her mom was about an hour and 20 minutes away. And it was, she drove. I don't know how she did it because I couldn't drive.
I could do it because I'm okay like that. I just kind of power through, but it's her. I just worry about her being real, just kind of not happy.
Oh, she'll be miserable. Yeah, of course.
Yes. But that'll be coming. I'm really excited to do that.
That's cool, man. Very cool. Yeah,
she'll love that. And of course, they've come over and seen her a lot. So that's been great.
That's nice. When you're having a bad day, man, what do you do to make yourself feel better?
Music, usually. I mean, it's the obvious answer, but usually listening or playing music. It's like I said to you, with the various sleep problems and other health stuff I've had over the years, that sometimes the noise in the head gets pretty bad with that. And so I find I pick up the guitar and I just play. It really, really helps, even just like it did when I was a kid, so it's still there. It still does the trick. I find composing very therapeutic as well. Like sometimes it can be frustrating. Sometimes it can be frustrating because I know there's a note I'm trying to find and it doesn't seem to be on my guitar that day. But it's nothing for me to sit down in an evening and 4 hours will have gone by and I won't even notice. And suddenly at the end of it, I'm like, oh, I've got these parts to the song now. I like to do that. I don't have as much time to do that these days as I like. But at the same time, I've got like 4 new songs on the go at the moment. So I try to write whenever I can.
That's great, man. That's really good.
And that definitely is a quiet place in the mind because you're so focused on getting out what it is you hear. You
don't seem to have a problem focusing, I wouldn't imagine, no?
No, but it's just there's a lot of day to day, isn't there? A lot of emails and text.
Life gets in the way, man. Yeah, I feel you.
And a lot of school schedules and
oh shit, you're right.
Extracurricular school stuff. There's always something going on. So.
It's tough being a parent, man.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm so glad that I'm like finished with that. No, I don't mean that sounds absolutely horrible, but like I'm not glad. I'm since I'm glad I'm finished. I enjoy my time now that it's not on something I have to do.
I think you probably appreciate it more.
Yes.
Don't you?
My God.
I definitely realized that before I was a dad, I had more time for things, and then I took it for granted. That kind of thing,
Yeah, and then you don't realize it. All of a sudden, you're knee deep in shit. You're like, "What the hell? How did this? Where? Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, I really appreciate the free time. I don't have any free time, but I appreciate that my time is mine. That's
yes,
really
exactly.
I'm grateful for that. Yeah. It's funny. Another conversation the other day. I thought of something, but who's a person who's had the biggest influence on your life, both musically and personally?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. With this, but you mean someone I know?
It didn't have to be whoever. Just that person who's had the biggest influence on your life. Sometimes people have said, it was Charlie Parker or somebody that they grew up listening to, or, Robin Trout, not Robin Trout, but something like that.
Oh, sure, it is Robin Trout.
I mean, I would be more inclined to say Robin Trout than Charlie Parker, but
Right. That's a tricky one. I mean, I would definitely say my dad was a big influence in the early years, but not musically, but just as a person,
Sure.
But musically, I don't know. I mean, I have to say that going back to that same memory earlier of the first time I heard Toto and the first time I heard Steve Lukather, that was a really like defining moment for me. Like, wow, you can play rock over jazz changes. I had never knew that was possible, and it's sort of, and with it's not really one person for me, but it's these moments of discoveries. And then when you discover someone, I'm very inquisitive and I want to go, well, who influenced him or her, and who influenced them? And I've done that in every genre I've kind of found myself in. I've done that, like with the blues, like you say, you get into Stevie Ray Vaughan or Eric Clapton, you go, yeah, but who came before them and who came before them, And so each one's like this sort of massive musical chart of all these connections, isn't it? Yeah. So with Lukather, that was a big one and then Larry Carlton was a huge one for me. But you see, the thing about Lukather that's funny is here I sort of had him on this pedestal and everything, and then when I was at Bad Robot, I met him and had lunch with him, so, and it's just the two of us sitting there having lunch together. And that was so weird for me, but now I've seen him a bunch of times and it's not weird anymore at all. Now he's just like a regular guy,
Who influenced him? Do you know?
Definitely Larry Carlton was a big one. Jeff Beck was a big one, and the Beatles were huge for him, I would say Jeff Beck's had a profound influence on me. I've never met him, but just in terms of the music, I keep coming back to the same people, but that's really, Gary Moore as well. To this day, when I hear one of those songs, it sort of takes me back to that being 15, 16, and that moment of going, wow, what is that? Why is that having such an emotional reaction to me? There's a really interesting book. I don't know if you heard of it. It's called "This Is Your Brain on Music."
No.
And I think it's the guy who wrote it's called Daniel. It's Leviton or something like that. And he was a musician and he's also a scientist. And he talks about the fact that when you're in those sort of formative years, in your teenage years, those songs you hear are literally physically getting imprinted in your brain. And so how people say, oh, it's amazing, I heard this song 30 years later and I remembered the lyrics and I remember where I was and I remembered this guy's argument is that it's literally like stored in your brain and then the synapses and everything stop doing that past a certain point. Once you get into your 20s and everything, that's not happening anymore.
That's wild.
I don't know if it's exactly, I'm probably paraphrasing it very unscientifically, but anyway, the concept's interesting, because it does seem to, like, I have a much stronger emotional connection to those kind of records, like those early Jeff Beck records and the Gary Moore and all that, that I heard then than I do. Like, if I discover something new now, I appreciate it and I like it, but it's not quite as intense as it was then. Do you find that?
Yeah, but for me, I chalk it up to that I'm too busy to give it the same. I used to be able to sit and do nothing but listen for 3 hours.
That's true. That is true. Yeah.
So to me, it's like, why do you meet more friends when you're younger? Typically,
that's true too.
Because for me anyway, it's just accessibility time,
Yep. No, so that's a very good point.
So I think I would challenge that guy on what he's saying. It not that it doesn't imprint, but there's a reason it imprints. If I was, reading, the Bible or anything like that, the same thing might have happened. I don't, or listening to Barbara Streisand, who, whatever, it would have same happened, or whatever, building model planes. Or if
I have a funny feeling that at 15, if I was reading the Bible, still probably wouldn't have taken me. But that's just me. That's just me. I'm just saying.
No, I should have said if I was playing guitar then, and that's probably why you have most of the successful people that are, they've been playing guitar at a young age, at a formidable age, because they had the time to sink that in. And like almost every person I've interviewed, regardless how old they are, male, female, they're like, I practiced 8 hours a day in my room.
Yes.
Well, you can't do that when you're 25 and 30 because you got to start working then.
Well, that's another interesting book. A guy wrote a book called Guitar Zero, and he wanted to challenge the premise that that kids can learn and absorb material quicker than adults. And his whole premise was based on what you just said, time. So he took maybe a 2-year sabbatical from his life, and he was very unmusical, as he termed it, and he decided he wanted to learn to play guitar. And so he practiced 8 hours a day for a year and a half, and then he was able to play some gigs, and he felt like he'd accomplished it. So he went out, but he said he had a terrible sense of rhythm and just felt really awkward. And so the premise was: is it that kids do? See, I think they do absorb quicker as well, but obviously the time factor is huge. And going to what you said about records, I remember I would buy a record and I would listen to that record for a month before I'd even think about, maybe looking at what other records were out there.
And you'd know every track. This is the first track. This is the right. So, well, I think, and part of that is because you have less in your brain. Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I think kids absorb more, but I think it's because they have less going on. Like they're not worried about paying bills or not. They don't have any responsibilities. It's like there's less. They're more in the moment.
Yes.
For sure. And then you can get much more shit done when you have nothing to think about. See,
and I think that's why playing guitar is the thing that I connected to so much, because I have that childlike feeling of being in the moment so much that sometimes this real world we live in can be a lot, and I find if I'm on a gig and I'm in the moment, that it's almost like being a child again, because you're incapable of having any other experience than that if you're really giving yourself to it in that moment.
You have no choice.
That's really what's happening. Exactly.
You can't think about, what note am I going to play in 10 minutes?
Exactly.
Or, that solo I did, last song, you can't be thinking about that shit. You got to be right there, and that's it.
Sometimes that stuff starts to creep in, and then you play, really badly. So,
I would imagine.
Yeah, exactly. So that's very true. I think that's a very good point.
That's one, I've only been playing guitar like close to 3 years. That's one of the things I've value most about it, is because when I'm doing it, I'm right there, and it has allowed me to get closer to being right there in other things I do. What
do you tend to do? Like, if you have 20 minutes to play, what's a typical thing you would do?
I won't play if I have 20 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is a blessing and a curse. It's more of a curse because I should just pick it up whenever I have. So if I don't have an hour, I won't practice that day, which is stupid. I should practice. I feel like this is stupid rules that we do in our brain. I feel like I can't count that as a day of practice if I played 20 minutes, which is absurd. I'm glad you prompted me to say this, because as I'm saying it out loud, I'm realizing how absurd that is. Like, what do you mean I can't count it? That's like saying when I used to read books, I used to feel like, man, I didn't like this book, or I didn't like this section. Well, just fucking skip it. And I never would do that. I feel, well, it can't count as a book I read. Like, what kind of stupid thing is that?
Yeah.
I don't do that now with books, but that's, as I'm talking this out, I'm realizing that I should just pick it up and play no matter what.
Yeah, you should, because it is quality, not quantity as well, And I think that somebody could play for an hour, but 40 minutes of that could just be noodling around, not doing anything, and the first 20 minutes might be really focused on something you want to do, and in which case that's the same time you had as if you just had your 20 minutes.
Yeah. If I had, so to answer your question, if I just had 20 minutes, I'd probably put on some blues and play.
Just jam along, kind of.
Yeah. Just try to learn better improvisation skills. Maybe pick something up. And I'm really trying to focus on learning how to play with changes now. I'm woefully behind, but that I'm just trying to become a better, know the neck better, break out of the box. Those kinds of things. So I just like to pick up.
It's when you start. I mean, I'm going to be working on playing through changes now for the next 50 years, hopefully, if I'm still on the planet. Because it's just. It's very challenging, but it's a great feeling as well, and it really improves your melodic sensibility. I suggest doing it on blues. Start off really making. Can you play a blues? Can you play a blues with no jam track? That would be the first thing you should try and do. Outline the changes with no jam track, and then say to somebody else, "Can you hear when the chord changes?"
No.
That's
the answer to that is no.
It's really tricky, but that's a really good, because then when you go back to using the jam track or playing with people, you're playing so much more melodic and so much more locked in.
Yeah. You know what? I only play blues when I'm listening to guitar. It's almost like I don't think I play anything but blues on guitar. It's really weird. I've always just been really in love with the blues, and I don't think I play anything but I don't even play rock. Although I'm trying to work out Richie Blackmore's solo for Smoke on the Water, which is rock. And I love that. I love rock, but I just seem to play blues more time. So
he was another one of my favorite players when Richie Blackmore, those early Deep Purple albums, and then the comeback album, was it Perfect Strangers? Oh, so good.
I saw them live at the Perfect Strangers tour. That was pretty good.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. First time I saw them live, they just switched over to Steve Morse. So
okay. Very cool.
Who's great as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I love Richie.
I hope that's Steve Morse.
The thing about Richie is Richie has something in common with Jeff Beck, in my opinion, in that both of them sound like it could go wrong at any moment. Like it really sounds like they're on the edge and they're not really worried about it, and I love that. They both have there's technique involved in what they do, but it's there's a rawness to both their playing that I just really like.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure, man. Man, I have to ask you this goofy question here. Favorite American food? I mean, you're like kind of American now, but What's your favorite American?
It's kind of funny. I really like barbecue kind of stuff.
That's good stuff, man. Are you kidding?
I really like barbecue chicken. It's probably my favorite American food, which is so American. It's ridiculous.
Yes. I was hoping you'd say something.
Funny story. When I first went to the Midwest, I went to this restaurant and it was like this barbecue place and they just come around and give you these bibs and everything, and I was absolutely horrified. I was like, there's no knife and fork. What do you mean? I felt like some sort of savage.
It's so
I just needed like some mead.
That's so like English.
Flat gun of mead. And some sort of buxom serving wench. I'll be back King Henry's time. So that was pretty funny. But I do really like barbecue.
It's very English response to that. Oh my God!
So.
Holy shit! What's your favorite UK food you miss? Besides cheddar crisps,
I do like a really good shepherd's pie. I like a really nice shepherd's pie. It's so British, it's ridiculous.
It's funny though. My kids I don't know, about a month ago, my older one was coming over and Ann said, "Hey, hon, what do you want to make?" He goes, "Shepherd's pie," because they grew up eating it all the time. It's really funny. Yeah, that's
when I was a kid, they really put the shepherd in the pie. So that was, it's a little tough, but
I can see that it's a very it's a very British food, and it's hearty and robust.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
I don't eat any of that. I do eat barbecue chicken. Hobbies or interests outside of music?
Let's see. I love tennis. I don't play much anymore. I used to play, but I don't play that much anymore. But I like watching tennis. I'm really, really interested in tennis. I think as a sport, I think the psychological aspect of it is utterly fascinating, and the fact that somebody's form can go from the top of their game to the bottom of their game to the top of their game within an hour. I just think it's fascinating. And the fact that there's no team there to help you. You're on some of these matches last 5-6 hours. And just
a match, really?
Oh yeah,
I didn't know that.
And just the mental capacity to keep that level of concentration, and of course the physical aspect of it, but the mental aspect of it is what really interests me, And I love the characters of sport. Like I used to watch it when I was a kid. I was really into Wimbledon and all that kind of stuff, and I had all my favorites back then, whether it was like McEnroe or Borg, and then through Agassi and all that. But these days, I love watching Rafael Nadal. He is just such an interesting character. Funnily enough, a very obsessive person.
Is he really?
Oh yeah, he'll bring he brings his 2 water bottles out, and he keeps moving them until they're directly in line, and he won't go back to play until he's lined them up.
Oh, that's super OCD, huh?
Yeah, it's super OCD. But his dedication to the sport and just the way he approaches it is fascinating, and then you've got somebody like Federer, who's just like this gliding. So he's like a beautiful guy to watch. Just like his form is so perfect, and then Nadal's like sort of a warrior, and so you got these two. I find it very interesting, both at the top of their game, but both very different styles, and psychologically how that works against and for each other. So I love tennis for that reason. I also like the other sport I watch is Formula One. Car
really, that's quite American.
Well, no, not Formula One.
Oh, it's not?
NASCAR would be American.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No,
do you know that that's the largest spectator? Maybe it's a myth, but I've been told race car driving is the largest spectator sport in this country.
Oh, I could see that.
Yeah,
especially like the NASCAR. No, I'm not really into the NASCAR. I mean, that doesn't really.
Formula One. That's Jackie Stewart. That's the last time. That's where I remember that name from.
And now it's like again, there are similarities. It's the psychological aspect of it, like the concentration needed to do one of those races. Like they lose a certain amount of their body weight in fluid. It's so
really,
they lose like 7% of their body weight every race or something crazy.
It's
like
that intense.
And that intense, and it's just the mental, again that thing of. They have to be in peak physical condition to do this. Yeah. I like sports where people have to dedicate everything they do to it. I find that I really respect that, and I just think mentally the toll it must take and the psychological strength you need to do it, as opposed to some team sports where I feel like you could phone it in a little bit one day and no one would know. You can't phone it in when you're going 140 miles an hour through the streets of Monaco. So, so those two sports I find very interesting.
Have you ever driven a car really fast?
Not. I mean, I've not those kind of speeds. No, I would like to. I think that would be really
cool. Man. BMW one time had some clinic, and part of the deal was you had to take the car up like 95, 100 miles an hour and and I was fucking shitting myself, man. It was really, and like you're whipping around a turn. I mean, it's not something I would do on a regular. It was pretty intense. And I thought about those race car drives. I'm like, holy shit, how do they do this?
Oh yeah. No, my dad and I always watched it when I was a kid, and we still, we call each other and talk about the races now.
That's cool.
So, yeah. And when, one time we went looking for these, we always go looking for different go-kart tracks and stuff like that when I was a kid.
Sure.
And we found one, that, I don't know. I mean, there's no way this would be legal in America, but in the UK, we found this go-kart track, and they made us put on the full flame retardant suit and the helmet and the thing over your face. It was like I could hardly breathe in the damn thing, right? And these things got up to 50 miles an hour, and a go-kart at 50 miles an hour, like they were twin engine. It was insane. I mean, it felt so fast. Both of us, when we came off, both of our hands were shaking for the next 2 hours. It was so intense, but it was great fun.
No, they would allow that here if they had like 3 pages of legal disclosure.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
As long as you get to sign the legal thing.
No, that's true. You would. Yeah. Yeah. So those are the two only real sports that I really do.
Have you been over up to what do they play in New York City at Forest Hills? Tennis to like.
Oh no, I haven't been to the U.S. Open.
Yeah, U.S. Open. Yeah.
No, I haven't. I'd like to go at some point. I was thinking about going to, because they have the one out here near Palm Springs as well. I forget what it's, the Indian Wells, is it? So so I'd like to go to that as well. But yeah, it's fun.
I was in Palm Springs one time, and it was like 110 degrees. I couldn't believe it. It was so hot that it was like, but it was weird. It felt not as bad as stepping outside here when it's 90, because there's this humidity is just.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It was
I've
weird.
been to Palm Springs. Yeah, the humidity is actually this last 2 months here in LA. We've had more humidity than we've had in the last 20 years.
Why?
Like it's been in the hundreds here for 2 months now, and with the humidity is crazy. It's reminding me more what it used to be like in the Midwest. But I used to play I'd be outdoor festival or a winery or something, and it'd be like 105 with a 97% humidity, and I'd be singing. It was like,
Why is it so humid there?
In the Midwest, it was crazy. Yeah.
I just realized I've been drinking a cup of coffee. It says "I love you" on the mug on both sides. Oh my God! Sorry.
I was going to mention it after we got off the
air. This little bond we have now.
Yeah. It's a little, I mean, it's a little fast for me, frankly. I like to work up a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, good great. Lord! I'm looking at this mug.
The heat, the humidity has been nuts. Yeah, but yeah, back then, it was pretty shocking when I first got used to those kind of heats. Yeah,
I'm sure, man.
Yeah.
Good Lord. Talk about a specific experience you had that maybe changed your life or changed the way you think about things.
Well, I'm probably pulling the obvious ones, aren't I? But I would have to say becoming a dad. I mean, it's so profound. I can't really, and I guess it's even more profound for me because my friends, a couple of my friends as kids, when we were teenagers and stuff, they were talking about, I can't wait to be a parent, and I would always be like, I don't think I'm going to have any children. I don't. That's not something that really interests me. In all seriousness, because I found that I genuinely disliked children, and here's the thing that's really funny. Now I have a child. People think I love children. I find them quite irritating for the most part.
Right, you just have patience for your own.
Yeah, your own. It's completely different.
Yeah, right. I'm kind of similar to that.
Yeah. So I was very against it for the longest time, sure. and even there was even some pushback with my ex-wife and I about it because I just didn't really want to do it, because I was too selfish. You see, because I knew that it was, the way I am. It's like it's going to break up the time and everything, but I was wrong about that. I mean, it did break up the time. I was right about that, but I was wrong about the experience of it. Yeah, it's just that it's hard to describe to someone that hasn't done it. You know, it's just that completely non-selfish, unconditional love.
Yeah.
You know, so that is huge for me. You know, now I'm not going to say it's still not a challenge sometimes, because
of course it's always going to be a challenge. And just even when they get older, it's still a challenge, because you never have all the answers that you wish you had.
Of course, yeah,
you know?
Yeah. So no, I would say that. I know it's kind of the obvious answer, but it is the true one. So
it's good, man. It's good answer. Toughest decision you ever had to make, or hardest thing you ever had to do?
Wow. I think I didn't really think of it as a tough decision at the time, because I just kind of rolled with it. But in retrospect, I think leaving England was a tougher decision than maybe I thought it was at the time, because I can tell it was so hard on my parents, because not having any brothers or sisters, So I think that one is part of it. I think sort of like accepting the fact that my wife and I were getting divorced and just getting on with life and making the best of that situation as I could, and readjusting the way the roles were,
it's almost harder to readjust than to get divorced.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that. So those, probably a combination of those two, yeah.
Thanks for answering that. It's funny when you talk about once you're finished. Again, we had 3, so it was not to minimize how it's tough with one, but when you have 3, it's just fucking.
No, I can't imagine.
It's like exponentially more difficult. It's exponentially busier is really what it is.
Right.
I'll never forget when my kids were they were out of the house now. Ann and I went up to New York, and I'll never forget this. We never were able to do this stuff. We went to, it was like, we saw a Mexican restaurant. It was like noon. We said, hey, let's go have some margaritas. Like, how fucking cool is that? Like, to go start having some drinks.
Right.
Like, we were like, and then we walked into it was down in Soho somewhere, which is south of Houston Street. And we walk in and we sit down, and like 5 tables away, there's a freaking birthday party for 3 years old.
Oh.
As soon as we heard them, my wife's like, let's get out of here. I'll never forget. It was like so classic, because I was like, yeah, even she feels that way. It's just like, we just wanted that, the freedom from that. It was really weird. It was,
I don't think it's weird at all. I think it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it was like, oh my God. Just it's so cool to be like having a drink at noon. It's not something we've ever done really that probably, because it was just been nonstop, 30 years of whatever kid raising, or 25 years. So I'll never forget that. It was kind of funny. We kind of joke about that now.
That is funny. Yeah. It's like of all the places.
Yeah. Like we go in there and it's like, oh, we're out. Boom. Goodbye. Last question, man, and I really enjoy talking with you, man. You're a super cool dude, and anytime you have something new, come on the show and let's talk about it, man.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Anytime, man. Biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of this change has been deliberate, and how much is just a part of aging?
Again, I don't want to repeat myself, but I do feel like
it's all good.
Becoming less selfish has been a big part of it. I guess that is part of aging, but I guess it's more about life experience as well. It's like, I feel like if I wasn't a parent, I probably wouldn't be less selfish. And, if I hadn't gone through some of the things I've gone through with relationships, it changes you, doesn't it? And I think there's part of me that sort of has this regret that I wasn't more studious, when I was a kid. And I have to say, like, in England, we were partiers. I mean, we really were. And I thought we were going to go out drinking for maybe a few years, but it sort of went on for a bit longer than we thought. Like I said to my mum once, I said, Mum, my friends would come over and we'd be like 15, 16, and you'd be fine with us having a few beers before we went out, and everything, and she said, yeah, well, she said, I thought you were going to grow out of it. It just took a lot longer
to grow out of it. Yeah.
So I wish that I'd been a little bit more studious with the guitar side. I mean, I was always playing, but I wasn't really as focused on it, and that, I tell you what sort of brought that into clarity. You remember the Mike Varney Spotlight thing, about that, like where Yngwie got discovered through that, and Richie Kotzen and Greg Howe and all these great players. There was a Spotlight column in Guitar Player magazine, and they'd send in their cassettes, back in the day.
I didn't realize that. Where have I been?
He signed all these people to Shrapnel Records, and that started all these careers.
Do you remember Shrapnel Records?
Later on, he had like blues, I forget what it's called, Blues Bureau or something. Anyway, it was all related. And I, and I always looked at that, and it was sort of this dream again, like Los Angeles and GIT and all this stuff, And anyway, so a few years ago, I sent him a CD that I'd made. And he wrote back, Mike did, and he said, this is fantastic. And he said, if I'd got this 10 years ago, I would have signed you. And I'll tell you,
that had to make you feel great.
Yeah, I know. He said the industry is just not, the label's not really doing that now, and he's just, and I just thought, wow, that's probably one of the most bittersweet moments of my life that I'm going to have,
But you don't know, had you sent it in earlier, would he have reacted the same?
Well, see, that's the thing. See, no, I don't think so. And I think, and this is one of those things. So if I give myself a hard time about stuff like that, I say, well, you know what? You could only, everything you produce now as a person and as a musician is based on your experiences. And it's not just your music experiences, it's life experiences, You have to get to a certain point to, maybe somebody connects to that a little bit more now because you've had some life experiences. And I don't know, it's hard to say, but anyway, so that was kind of a strange, a strange central point there,
Well, it gave you some validation too.
Yeah, sort of, I guess, I guess, no, I think it did.
Yeah, of course. How the hell? Yeah. And it should, it's a pretty, complimentary thing that
I guess I've always gone sort of back and forth between that thing of like, because I'm never satisfied. Like I tend to record most gigs, and I record some rehearsals, and I never have the time to listen back really. But like, if I'm answering emails in the morning, having coffee before I go to buy or something, I'll just have it on and just sort of be listening to it a bit. And I'm very, very critical of it. Always, like it's never good enough. Yeah. Not to the point where I go, I'm going to quit, because like I said earlier, that's not me at all. It makes me practice more, but I'm never really satisfied, with it. And so when things like that come along, that helps with that a little bit,
Yeah. And credit to you. A lot of guys get divorced and then they get more selfish. Like, I'm scorned, fuck women. I've met plenty of guys. No, I'm just saying I've met plenty of guys gone that way too. So, credit to you that you use as an opportunity to, clean house a little bit and
yeah, well, I think it makes you reflect as well. I think there were mistakes made on both sides, and I think we both acknowledge that now. So yeah, I think you just have to reflect on it and sort of try to do better going forward, don't you?
That's all you can do, man.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, and I can't thank you enough, Rob. Let me tell people where they could find you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being so genuine and so cool to talk with and hang with.
Thank you.
So check out Rob online. It's Rob Garland, and his website is robgarland.net. It's GARLAND. And let me tell you a few things we can do. First of all, if you go to his website, you can check out his Spotify account, and he's got some cool stuff there that you ought to follow. You could also find him on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And again, go to his website. Everything emanates from there. He's got an artist channel on TrueFire. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think I talked about it a little bit earlier, didn't I? But the TrueFire Artist channel is just basically, I add new content every month, new guitar lessons, lots of, but it's not just a dry kind of thing. I'm trying to make it more of a community aspect where we talk about, great guitar related things, whether it's gear or tones on records or concerts, so trying to make it a little bit interactive. And I like people suggesting ideas for content, for new lessons that I can upload. I just did a bunch of stuff on chord tones on there. So, lots of lessons on there, but lots of other content as well. Musician jokes, downloads, jam tracks, lots of stuff. Lots of my jokes are based around my hatred of the ukulele, so that's good. I have a real relationship with that instrument, and I use the term instrument very lightly. which doesn't make me popular in Santa Monica because ukulele
is that big there?
It's the instrument of choice. Yeah,
in Santa Monica.
There's a lot of hipster action.
Oh, yeah.
You see a ukulele and somebody with long trousers and no socks, and then you know we're in ukulele town. So yeah. I digress anyway. Yeah. But yeah, so the artist travel is kind of fun.
That's cool. And they could get access to that from your website.
I can get access to that on the website. And like I say, I'm shooting new courses for TrueFire down at their new studio next year. And I also have a series of courses I've been shooting myself here, the melodic soloing courses. I have 2 of those. Again, you can get to them from my website.
And you have promo material for them?
And then I have, yes, yeah,
Great.
I have. There's links to YouTube videos where I talk about what's in each of those courses and stuff like that, and download links. And I also have 2 new songs coming out. They'll probably be out on Spotify and iTunes soon, that I recorded last year with my Eclectic Trio. We recorded live at Revolver Studios here, and that's a different thing because I usually will lay out.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Late into the night. Shocker. And but this one we recorded live, so there was no obsessing allowed. It was like, let's go in, let's do it. And I haven't heard those tracks for a while now, so it'd be interesting to see how they turned out. We got those 2, and then I've been writing new songs for Catatonic, the jazz band I'm playing, and I'm writing horn parts for those, which is kind of interesting. So we're going to record those at some point soon too. So lots of new music coming out.
Where do you post where you're playing?
On the website as well. I use things like Songkick and Bandmix, those, not Bandmix, Bands in Town.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Songkick. And now they go over to Spotify as well. So we just finished a run of gigs, but when more gigs are announced, it'll pop up on the website and it'll pop up on all those apps and everything as well,
Awesome. So check out Rob when he's playing and go tell him you heard the interview. Also, real important, Rob gives private lessons. And he's sharp as a whip, man. So if check him out online, and he's, as you heard, a really cool guy to talk to. And he does do Skype lessons, and you can contact him at his email if you're interested, rob@robgarland.net. Remember, it's robgarland.net. And, just tell him what you're interested in, and he's probably got some series of questions that he's going to ask you or something.
I welcome anybody that's interested in lessons. Reach out to me because I always like to have a good chat with people and get a feel for where they're at. And what I tend to do with some of the Skype students, because I've done a lot of video exchange lessons, because the Skype lessons are live, people really like that because they have immediate feedback and everything like that. But Skype has some connection limitations. So what I usually have people do is, we work through the lesson, and then I have them send me a video in between that lesson and the next one that I can review, and then we go back to the next Skype lesson.
That's really cool.
So, I keep a separate lesson plan on every student, even the guys at MI I do that for, because, I teach so much and it's so easy to, it's basically more for me than for them, but I like to make sure there's a plan, because I used to go to teachers when I was a kid and they go, what do you want to do? And I say, well, I don't know. What do you
I know. Why are you asking me? Right? How the hell do I know? That's why I'm here. It would just
be like a jam or something. And I'd sometimes walk out there like, well, I could have just done that at home, So I like to make sure I'm really helping people, So
that's awesome, man.
Take it seriously.
Well, listen, man, I can't thank you enough for your time. Everybody, please check out Rob Garland online. And, man, thank you again. This has been really cool.
Thank you so much. And can I just say, I really appreciate you asking me to do it because you have, like I said, I've been listening to the show and looking through the roster, and you have just some amazing guitar players. So I'm really honored to be asked.
Thanks, man. No, the honor is mine. Thanks for coming on the show. I really enjoyed my time with you. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Thanks again to Rob Garland for spending time with us. Please check him out online at robgarland.net. He's got a ton of good content on YouTube. Make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com, sign up to get on our newsletter list. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have some fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.